everybody. I'd like to call the June 27th, 2017 special board meeting to order. I'd like to lead off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming on this wonderful evening. It's a very important meeting that we need to conduct business on for this evening. And the main item on the agenda this evening is to discuss the code revisions to Chapter 120. Just to bring everybody up to date, this was originally revised, and then we had a public hearing, which we closed the public hearing and opened up a new public hearing, which is this meeting. And for the purpose of that, we actually removed the section in regard to short-term rentals from this section of code. And we did that because we formed a special committee. And the special committee will be meeting tomorrow for the first time to start the discussion about short-term rentals. And their purpose is to really come forward and make a recommendation to the village board. So there's 7 members on that committee which will be working towards a plan that they can present to the village board that we can act on, working with the planning and the zoning and people with a special interest to pull that all together. When I originally set up the short-term rental committee, I had anticipation that we could get it started much earlier in this, so I apologize for the delay in getting that committee up and running, but tomorrow will be the first time for that committee to meet. So with that, I want to open the meeting up to the public hearing and shift the mic over to Brant, who led the code revision, and talk about this code.
So, since the December 8th public hearing, this is going to get tedious, but we have the red line draft that folks have access to. Since the December 8th, 2016 public hearing, we made substantial changes which are shown in red, underlined with striked outs, and that stuff. I'm going to go through this. We've deleted the references. Yeah.
Are copies of this available?
There were 20 copies at the door when we came in.
Okay, but there's about 40 people over
There's no red lines either.
You got the clean?
They have the clean version.
Okay. The red line was here.
That was the one that was in my office that was available now.
Posted online.
Yes, it was.
And we have made copies available throughout the announcement of public hearing with both the red line and then the revised version on both our email website, our Facebook website, and here in the office for everybody to pick up and review. Apologize if you weren't able to get one, but they have been out publicly available.
I had mine.
I have an extra one without the red lines.
Oh, I want one with red lines.
So I'll just do the narrative here. We deleted the reference to adult uses for constitutional reasons. Table 1, the note references Fairgrounds District Article 7, bed and breakfast home replaced by room rental home. We've changed the name of the bed and breakfast home to a room rental home. Table 2 note references Fairgrounds District Article 7. Noise section 120-13A 1A and B increases limits to 80 decibels from 70 decibels during the day. Next, noise section 120-13A2B adds snow removal equipment to exempt transient noises. Fences, section 120-14A2, we add a refuse enclosure to the exceptions. Farm animals, we went back to the original language that exists today. No changes to farm animals. Parking table 3 changes bed and breakfast parking standard. Parking table 3 changes restaurant standard and adds room rental home standard. Bed and breakfast section 12017 replaces bed and breakfast home with room rental home, as I said before. Allows the registered resident to host in place of an owner and references section 12016 for parking. In signs, section 12019A1, we changed replacement to alteration as required for a sign permit. Village Center section 12024C allows apartments in the rear half of the building's first floor, not before. Residential yard storage, section 120.27B omits boats from the list but leaves boats and trailers. Gateway business, section 120.34 allows apartments in the rear half of the building's first floor. The historic district overlay, section 120.37B1 changes the word encouraged to considered. Non-conforming uses, section 120.52F adds determination by the CEO, zoning enforcement officer. Non-conforming buildings, section 120.53D adds determination by zoning enforcement officer. In the word usage section, 120.64 changes agricultural use definition. In the word usage section, 120-64 changes apartment, applicant, and application definitions. The word usage section 120-64 changes bed and breakfast establishment and change of use definitions. And the word usage section 120-64 changes the farm definition from 10 acres to 7.5. The word usage section 120-64 replaces bed and breakfast home with room rental home definition. There's miscellaneous attorney changes, too numerous to bring forth. Additionally, to carve out the short-term rental stuff, what we don't have in the draft is suggestion between a representative of the group and me to make additional changes to the draft. And I'll just go through those. In section 120-6, table 1, under room rental home, change special permit to permitted in the village center and residential districts. So this would change a room rental home, which used to be the bed and breakfast home, from special permit to permitted, because that's the way it's always been. Again, the short-term rental committee is supposed to address these issues. So we wish to carve these out and have the short-term rental group wrestle with these changes. 2, section 120-6, table 1, change the prohibited use in the residential and gateway business districts to go to special permit under the use daycare family use. This is a daycare issue because it's regulated by the state. And we can't prohibit a daycare family use in the residential district. Strike section 120-28C8, which is a reference to vacation rentals, which we have deleted because we're taking that language out of this draft, and we're going to have the short-term rental group decide whether we should have vacation rentals or not. And this is difficult to explain. Replace the first sentence of section 120-17, bed and breakfast establishments and room rental home, with the following sentence. A bed and breakfast establishment may be allowed in an owner-occupied single-family dwelling, and a room rental home may be allowed in an owner-occupied single or two-family dwelling, subject to applicable special permit and site plan approvals and in compliance with the following standards. So that is just basically to keep things status quo, again, to be considered by the short-term rental committee. Next, in section 120-17(1), or I, strike the words as a condition of the special permit, because now room rental homes, or if we suggest that they're not going to go through special permit, then that's not applicable. So it's the intention of those above reference changes with regard to short-term rentals that they're to be reviewed again by the short-term rental committee. So
Okay,
that's a complicated
yeah, so Grant,
explanation of the changes.
thank you for the summary. Is there any more in terms of the summary?
That's it.
At this time, I would like to make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Carried. Okay. We'll now enter into the public hearing section of the session. We have a list of people who would like to comment. So Kevin Curry, you're first on the list.
The draft zoning code being considered tonight, it's the product of a special zoning commission that was formed more than 2 years ago. did a lot of hard work. You know, it's a very hard job to try to get the right balances. The draft version touches on a multitude of subjects, one of those being short-term rentals. After the first public hearing, there was strong protest from the short-term rental advocates, people that have something at stake. We were told after that meeting in February by Mayor Tortorella that the revisions affecting short-term rentals would be removed from the draft. We were told by a representative of the board, the current board, as late as June 12th, that the draft would have all short-term rental revisions removed. The draft does not have short-term rental revisions removed. Point blank. It's hard for us to understand how this is happening. It's hard for us to understand why the Special Zoning Commission worked for years but never sought input from those who would be impacted. It's hard for us to understand why the draft code has been released to the public, a legal minimum of 10 days before this public hearing. Public discussion is being stifled. Mayor Bassett, to his credit, recognizes that there's not been an inclusive process to date. He indeed has formed a working committee to consider STR issues going forward. Very positive. We're grateful. But you might ask, why is the board voting on provisions affecting short-term rentals before they have the inputs from the committee? And better yet, given that I, as the advocate, the appointed advocate for short-term rentals, we're not happy with the revisions in the draft code, why are we going to stifle our protest as we are? We understand that a lot of work's been done, and we understand it's important to get this draft through. So we want to offer our support for that. It's conditional support. And we know we can't get a resolution, we know we can't have anything formal, but we are doing this. We are not going to protest. We're not going to pick it apart. It's because we think that the current board is working for an open, inclusive, transparent government. We're putting our faith in the board that these ordinance changes are not the final word. This is not, as far as short-term rentals, this version cannot be the final. If we believed it was the final, we would be making a protest. We think it's the start. I personally have a concern about how the committee is going to function. Is the committee going to put out something that is voted on by the majority? Does it have to be unanimous what comes out? If it's majority, I don't know how we're going to necessarily be able to get a version of the code out that might allow, in some limited, regulated fashion, non-hosted short-term rental. That is one of our biggest concerns. The current code does not allow non-hosted short-term rental, nor does the revision, and that's very, very important to the group. So we're counting on that this process is going to bring another draft to the table to be considered by the board. And because of that understanding, we are not going to pick apart the provisions tonight.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Pat Strong? Pat?
Yes.
Good evening. I've had a bed and breakfast at my home on Chestnut Street now for 18 years, and it's been a wonderful business for me, and it's brought in lots of revenue. It also is wonderful for the village as far as restaurants being occupied, shopping, etc. My big concern is to have everybody who is involved in a bed and breakfast be on an even playing field. And I feel that right at the moment, and for several years, it's not been so. I know lots of people do not pay Dutchess County 4% bed tax, which has been an official tax for many years, and they do not pay, many do not pay sales tax. And these are things that many of us do pay. I think if we want to do this, it has to be even for everybody. I don't think you can have loopholes. You say that the existing measures are that you have a homeowner in the home or on the property, which I feel is reasonable to ask. But instead of that happening, a lot of homes are being bought in Rhinebeck now, strictly to run as a B&B, and they're totally absentee owners. They don't live on the property, they don't live in the house. And what's happening in the village, I don't know about the town, but in the village we're having multiple little mini hotels on residential streets, and it changes the complexion of a historic village. You don't know your neighbors anymore because they're not there. Every weekend somebody else is moving in, moving out. Some also come during the week. It changes everything that Rhinebeck has started out to be, which is a beautiful small historic town with all these houses being bought, generally by a lot of out-of-town people, just as a quote business, as a mini hotel. I think somehow there has to be somebody who is monitoring this. I know I went on to Google and Googled village B&B and Airbnb. And you can see them, there's like 25 of them, right, just in the village. And they're all doing something different. They're all flying by the seat of their pants. Nobody seems to be monitoring any of them. I have one next door to me that's an Airbnb that opened up the past couple of years. They don't live on the property, they live out of town. And I have called up once or twice at 1 in the morning to say, you know, the people are out of control. If I have to be up at this hour, so do you. Please come and monitor what's going on. There has been some garbage strewn around. Also, when no one lives there, people know that no one lives there, and there have been people going into the backyard and using their facilities unbeknownst to anybody. And I don't like strange people coming right next door up against me who nobody knows they're there. They're just using the property. Next thing they know, they can sneak in after dark, and it's available. If you had a resident who was living there, they would know what was going on their own property. So I feel it's very important to be really overseeing this situation. I think it's a great business, but I think it needs to be monitored, and I think it needs to be everybody doing the same thing. Thank you.
Pat, I have a question for you, though, if you don't mind.
Sure.
In regard to this code revision, are there specific areas within this revision of the code that you have an objection to that we could note?
I have not, to be honest, looked it over thoroughly. This is the first time I'm reading it, but my big thing is where it says somebody must be, an owner must be on the property and must be taking note of what's going on. And also the other thing, in the past, as I say, I've done this for 18 years. In the past, there were limits to how many bedrooms you could have in your home. I've seen people, you know, with 3, 4 bedrooms. It's too many people. I've seen places next door to me that sometimes they have 3 cars. There's 3 small bedrooms, and initially years ago it was 2 rooms could be rented as a B&B in the village, unless you had prior authorization or it's grandfathered or something. But that's not the case now. You get a lot of people coming in, and it's unmonitored. It's gotten so big that nobody is looking out for what's actually going on.
Thank you, because I believe that in this section of the code, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we're defining short-term rental to be an inclusive state of unhosted and hosted in some capacity. So in reference to this code, which we're trying to address tonight, what we really want to do is work on the specifics in regard to this code, which removes short-term rentals from that section. I know Kevin has some concerns that maybe not all of the revisions have been identified to be removed that we have, but the focus is to get the code minus the issues that we're dealing with the short-term rental committee approved tonight. So if anybody has those, when we come forward, I would like to know specifically in terms of regard to this code, where you have an objection or a concern or issue with, so that we can address it as part of the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amy Hutching,
I'd like to pass.
you're gonna pass?
Yeah, thank you.
Stand up and introduce yourself then anyway.
Hello, I'm Amy Hutchins, and I'd like to pass. I'm speaking tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Kurthros.
Hi. I would like to thank everyone that's on the board. I would never want to do that. I've been here my whole life. And no matter what you do, you're always irritating someone else. Some people don't want change. I mean, I wish I could go back to my house where my mom and dad were still alive and have the same bedroom that I had and toys and everything. I know we have to change. Okay, but what's most important here, whether it's the bed and breakfasts or the business districts, we have to discuss it with everyone that's involved in it. I know your bed and breakfast has been there for quite some time, but we do have to let new people come in and run businesses, because Rhinebeck is a really nice place to live. I still can leave my keys in my car. I'm not worried about it. Nothing really.
Where you park?
And the real issue is I understand how hard you try, but what's not happening is we're not speaking to the business people that have a huge input that would really help out. And just because someone just moved here last year doesn't mean we shouldn't be talking to them, you know. I used to hear my elders always say, well, they're not local. You know, they've only lived here 25 years. And that used to bother me because, you know, not everybody can be born here. You know? It's something that we really need to take advice. I know out in Nantucket, people rent out their places, and it's doing pretty well. It's probably one of the best vacation rental places closest to us. If we could mirror image people through their rules and regulations, that's what's important as a business owner. I may have some input, but I would say if someone's doing well at it, if a community or a district is doing well at it, try and mirror image something like that. I do know that my dad always told me not to become cynical as we get older. And it's really hard, you know, when we're in a job and we think that we know a lot. But if you're my age or older, you really should realize we don't know that much. We used to know a lot in our 20s, but there's so much out there. And besides the bed and breakfast, I do know that the business district needs to grow. And I know that the businesses aren't as doing as well because there's no parking. We've had parking problems since 1980. We've collected money from all the businesses and we've spent it. And I don't see a new parking lot. I don't see where a new parking lot's going to go. And we really are in dire needs of business decisions. We don't have to depend on someone because, they have their masters or their doctorates. Whatever they do with their masters and doctorates, I'm sure they're very good at it. But I don't know anybody in this room, and I don't know anybody that has their masters and doctorates in how to make Rhinebeck better and how to make Rhinebeck grow. And you can't always work in a shoebox. I've seen situations where a business was a dentist across from the Catholic Church, and then it sold, and the family moved out, and zoning law said, oh, you can't have a business there anymore. It only can be X amount of business. Our district has to grow. The village has to grow, and the parking has to grow. And also there's some changes that are going on with signage. We received an award back in the 80s when my mom designed the front of the building. And it was from the Historic Association for Dutchess County for the nicest signs. And I've been saying this for years, if you have a 40-foot long building, you're only allowed 20 square foot of signage. Well, that's good if you got a one-story 40-foot building, but if you have a two-story 40-foot building, you're still only allowed 20 square foot of signage. So no matter what we speak about tonight on your changes, it may affect one person business-wise, and it may affect another person that doesn't want change. We really have to get in the middle and get proper decisions so when it's time to fix up your house, you can afford to fix up your house. I remember when my dad used to try and help people out during Thanksgiving and Christmas times. And there were local people, and there still are local people, and they're not as well off as they could be. And maybe if they could run a one-room bed and breakfast out of their house, or if they could, rent out certain areas. Just because it's a rule, I know you can go to the Zoning Board of Appeals and get a variance. I understand that. But people need to be more wide open on their decision making instead of being, well, this is the rule, this is how it is, don't let your backside hit the door on the way out, we can't be that way. And I found that it's becoming more and more that way. I have a sign that I'd really like to paint, and right now I can't do anything to the building because if I do something to the building, I wasn't savvy enough to know that they were going to change the laws. It used to be grandfather clause. If you had something, since Moby Dick was a minnow, you didn't have to change it, unless you did big structural change. Well, now laws have been implemented that if you do any kind of upgrading, you need to bring your signs to regulations, how they are. And you can see that liquor store sign from the Beacon Arms, and people that go to the Beak want to drink at night, and someone said, well, you can't have that sign up there anymore. So I want to take the vinyl siding down and change the building and make it back towards the historical value that it should be, and I can't do that. I feel like Al Stickle. He had an awning out in front of his building, and there was a rip in the awning. And I said, and this is in the 80s. I said, Mr. Stickle, when are you going to fix that rip? He goes, no, he says, I'm not going to fix that rip. He said, that was done in the 60s. Those kids during Halloween ripped it. He says, if I fix that awning, they're going to raise my taxes. And so, what's going on? Are we supposed to step back and not do anything and just let it rot? Or are we supposed to, upgrade? I do know one thing. As a business person, if I rent out a home, if I have an expenditure, it's a tax write-off. If I own a home and I have an expenditure, it's not a tax write-off. It comes out of my pocket. I can't understand why people say, well, we shouldn't have a business district any bigger, or we shouldn't have Airbnb in certain places, or we shouldn't have bed and breakfasts in certain places. If that family or that home needs to survive that way, in order to keep that family owning a home. I just saw a man, Bud, he lost his house after This family's only over 225 years. You know, what are we doing? You know, what's happening here? We're making rules and regulations that, you know, people can't survive. The realtors like that, because then they get to sell. You know, but we really need to work together with business people. And, you know, people on this board are very savvy. You know, I've seen Mr. Clark for some time. I played ball with him, and I've known Howie since Moby Dick was a minnow. But we really need to work together, and not like this.
Joe, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
In regard to some of the issues you brought up, are you aware of the makeup of the short-term rental committee? That it includes a business representative, you know, to bring everybody together to form that?
And what business representative experience do they have in the village?
They belong to the chamber, which represents all the businesses.
Well, I belonged to the chamber for 20 years, the merchants, and then I went to go talk about signage, and none of them backed us up, and we ended up winning, you know, the signage dismay that we had. So, you know, chamber people to me haven't helped out the village businesses at all. At all. Because they don't want, it's just like the local attorneys, they don't want to help out local people because they're all friends with each other.
All right, well, thank you, Joe.
Okay.
Much appreciated.
Sorry I'm cynical,
You got it from your father?
but not quite as bad.
He was a good man.
Yep, thank you.
Maglino.
Hi, I'm Bob Maglino. I live in the village 32 years now. I understand I have about 18 more to go, and I'll be considered a Rhinebeck.
Gotta get rid of that accent.
I recently, I'm from Brooklyn, so I would never leave my keys in the car. Originally, aspiring to be a Rhinebeck in 12 more years. I recently won the Nobel Prize for a paper I wrote on how to improve Rhinebeck. You may have heard about that. Personally, I think the businesses in Rhinebeck are doing fantastic. The rents are certainly high enough. But what we're here mostly for tonight is to talk about this short-term rental. Some of you know that I'm a widower. I lost my wife about 14 years ago. My 3 children are all grown and gone, so I live alone now in my house on South Parsonage. And you know, it's an extra challenge to maintain a house by yourself, and of course paying all the taxes and everything. So a little under 3 years ago, I started renting out my daughter's old room on Airbnb. Owner occupied, of course. And it's been very, very helpful to me. I don't have any signs out in the front. I would never put a sign on my lawn that says this is an Airbnb. I want to maintain the character of my house and the character of the village. I'm really pretty much for all of these provisions. Unfortunately, some people are not going to be happy with me, but I am against non-occupied rentals. I believe that only rentals should take place for people who live in the house, in that house. I'm against people buying properties in Rhinebeck. They live elsewhere, and they're renting out their houses on Airbnb or something like that. I'm against that. I hope that we will be allowed to continue owner-occupied Airbnbs. Like I said, the extra income for me has been very important and very useful. And I do believe that I've, you know, shuffled many a tenant, many a guest, I should say, to Rhinebeck restaurants and Rhinebeck attractions. So I know that, you know, indirectly I help the village as a whole as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
You're on the list, but you're last.
Thanks, Howard.
Next on the list, Mr. Dennis McGuire.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to speak on a different topic, so if you have people that want to continue about the rentals, that would be fine with me if you pick it up later.
Your call, Dennis. We'll put you down to the bottom of the list.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Bruce Mazza.
hear me? I had a couple hearings with other people. I'm going to just characterize this rather than a written statement because I'm speaking for myself and I'm a resident. I'm also speaking for a person who couldn't be here tonight because she broke her arm in 2 places. And this is about this issue of the non-owner occupied rental. And I will characterize her view, which is also mine. In fact, I'll read this part of it, which is, well, partly she said, if I didn't have the extra income coming in, I couldn't even stay, and I think there are probably more people like that. If it's because of big parties, rule them out in regulations, charge us a modest % of our intake, and limit the number of days we can rent year-round, perhaps 60 or 90. I think that kind of gets rid of this idea of somebody buying it, you know, a totally absentee owner. But don't rule this out entirely. You will see more people headed to nearby towns and villages that permit it. This is the way of the future. The train has left the station. I think if we get rid of that idea entirely, i.e. you can't rent out your whole home, whatever it is, for limited periods of time, it's like trying to ban the internet, and we end up looking ridiculous, and I think that people will end up going elsewhere. I also understand, I think people made some good points. I think it should be a level playing field, and the regulation should be on what the renters do. If people are leaving garbage, if they're making noise, whatever, then, you know, don't let them continue to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Again, I just want to remind everybody that we really want to focus on the code revisions that are here. And so it would, and there's quite a long list of people, so if you can keep your points distinct and bring forward, the board and everybody, I think, would appreciate that input. But we're not going to cut you off if you have something to say. So with that, Kirk Reichert. How are you this evening, Kirk?
Good, how are you? This is talking about the 120-13, the decibel levels. A couple things. Last time we were up here, talked about how when we were all congregating, again, we peaked at 68.8. So that means we were pushing the levels after 8 o'clock towards the revision. So therefore, any restaurant with outside seating, nobody can talk. If we get rid of outside seating in Rhinebeck, we're going to probably lose half the restaurant. That is probably this time of year 90% of their income. A couple things that I did this weekend. One, farmer's market. 11:45 a.m. standing in the middle of it, peaked at 113. So they were breaking the law. If that is going to be the revised section. Bread alone, 4 men having coffee were 84.3. So these levels I think are way too low. Toilet flushes at 75 decibel. So you guys know how loud that is. Everybody's flushed the toilet before. So anybody sitting outside after 8 p.m., so that restaurant, bar, store, whatever it be, would be able to get fined. And I don't think that's fair. We are a business district and we need to run our business. So that's it.
Thank you, Kirk. Elijah Bender.
I just want to say that I'm against the proposed sign law that takes a non-conforming sign after 14 months and requires that it be removed. And I'm going to submit a letter to the record on that. There are signs that are historic in this village, and I think that they give this village the character that it has. So that's how I feel on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Elijah. Apologize if I do not pronounce this correctly because sometimes it's hard to read, but I think it's Bill Viking. You're gonna, oh, Bill Vickery. Ah, nice. Sorry, I couldn't read it. You're gonna pass. Tom Darby.
Good evening, everyone. 100 years ago, my grandfather moved from Brooklyn and out to bought a Rocky Farm on Island. And a year later, my mother was born. She went to graduate from Rhinebeck High School. My father was a trooper here in Rhinebeck during World War II. They retired up here on that farm. I've now retired, I now have that farm. And so I took some of my money when I did retire and didn't want to have it all in stock, so bought a condo at Asher Road, where my son lives. And he helps me on the farm, thank goodness. And he also, lives in town and works in town. He works in one of the local businesses full-time. And to help us deal with the expense of owning a condo and living and everything, we do vacation rental by owner on primary weekends. We just started doing it about a few months ago. But he does move out of the, he doesn't rent, it's a 2-bedroom condo, so we don't rent it as a 1-unit thing where he stays there. He moves out because that's what people want. They want their own place. And so for the weekend, he'll move back with us. We'll rent it out for the weekend, and we'll go back, and that's how it's done. So we're not, I don't know if that qualifies as owner-occupied or hosted or whatever. But, it's, that's just our situation. So I don't know the specifics of the, I haven't read the regulations and things. I actually was on the planning board in the 80s down in Westchester County. So I could read the regulations if I wanted to, I suppose. But I just try to give you the sense of what I'd like to take into account is our situation. Other people are in that situation where while we're not occupying the property at the moment that it's being rented, the other 300 days or 350 days of the year, whenever we are there, and that's our situation. So I just hope that the regulations can take that into account. Okay.
Thank you, Don. May Crawford.
I am actually not speaking about particular line items in your code, but I'm speaking about what I think are bad omissions to line items in your code. And that is that I don't think there's any real protection for our urban street trees in your code, and those clauses that affect street trees, like your desire to have planting strips, for instance, which I feel is all well and good, but it doesn't define the size of that planting strip at all. And I just have been looking to a recent building that was built, redone, the deli, and the planting strip that was put in there with a nice curve is so narrow, it's like 1.5 to 2 feet wide, that you could never put a tree there. So I really think that you need to amend this code so that we will provide good spaces for trees to be put in when people do either do new construction or redo their buildings so that we can have street trees. And whether that's planting strips or whether it's ample cutouts and structural soil, I think it's really important that it's in the code. Also, you have an item, I think, in there defining site planning specs, having to have a list of 4-inch or maybe 6-inch caliber trees listed, but it doesn't indicate whether that's to protect those from destruction during the construction. But if that's the intent, I think you need to spell out how to protect those trees during the construction period. That's all.
Thank you, Meg. Gwen.
Could you just repeat your name for the minutes, please?
Yes, my name is Gwen Barden, and I live on South Parsonage Street. First of all, I want to congratulate you, Mayor Bassett, for your election in March. So I know that a lot of us here work very hard on that. Anyway, I started renting my house. I really didn't read the code very clearly. I just received it now. So I'm not really sure what is in the code and how that affects me personally or others in the room. but I can say that I do, I guess you would call it unhosted rentals of my home. And I really think that it's done in a limited way. Sheepin' Wolf Festival, might have 3 ladies in there that are knitting all weekend. And the Country Living Fair, I have repeat people come back, so I do know who they are, or recommendations. So it is done in a way in which I vet people that come to stay at my home. I also meet and greet them, show them around, give them the rules and regulations. They sign a lease. So, and I call them regularly while they're there, check and see if they need anything. If they're there more than a day or 2, I'll come by and water the flowers or check on things. So I am around, even though I'm not physically living there. And I honestly would think that somebody that does host their home wouldn't be there 24/7 either, necessarily. I mean, I might be there last, I'm not sleeping there, but I honestly feel that it isn't that dissimilar. Another thing too is that if I needed to leave, if I couldn't rent my home as a short-term rental on occasion, I may have to leave Rhinebeck, whether that would be selling my house or renting it long-term is undecided. And I really believe that if I had to rent it out long-term, it wouldn't have the care that I put into it. Someone will stay in my house for 2 days, 3 days, and I come back, it's cleaned, it's maintained, I see what's going on. I take care of the flowers, the gardens, and I really don't necessarily think that that would be kept to that standard in a long-term rental. So I think at least for me, it's been able to help me to stay in my home, maintain it, fix it up, keep it. And I think it keeps my house healthy. I always say my house pays for its own health care. And so I think that that's a good thing. And it also keeps and maintains the integrity of the village if I can keep up my home in the way that I have been and want to continue to do so. So anyway, this is about the noise thing. I know that there's a new pizza delivery guy here in the Village Pizza. It has a very loud muffler in his car, and I'm sure that it's much. I didn't even know it coming up and down South Parsonage, and then I saw him pulling into Village Pizza with this rusty car, and I said, I'm sure that poor guy doesn't, it's not the, I don't even know what, I just lost my train of thought. The decibels, but I'm sure he's not under the decibel law. I don't know, he's just a young working kid, so, thank you.
One quick question. When the house is not being rented, you live in it?
Oh, I live in it full time.
So it's only on the weekends when you have it rented out that you...
Yeah, just certain weekends, not every weekend. I mean, I didn't rent it out at all between, say, November 1st and June. So now I'm doing it occasionally, the Country Living Fair, a few other weekends. But it's enough to make a huge difference for me to, I just had to have the oil tank taken out of my, the driveway. I had septic issues that I had fixed. I have foundation issues. These are old homes. And it's really helping me to be able to fix it and make Rhinebeck beautiful. And I could go somewhere else. I also want to have an art studio in my backyard for personal use. And so I realized that in order for me to fulfill that dream and stay in Rhinebeck, I have to rent. I could go elsewhere and buy a less expensive home. I work across the river. I have a lot of friends there. And I could do that, but I really don't want to. But if I was forced to do that, that is another option I would need to take. So I hope I don't have to do that, and that, my plea here is taken under consideration when these new zoning laws are put into place. And the committee, I support Kevin and whatever he, wants to do to, advocate for all of us. So I really support what he has to say, and I'm sure he'll be in communication with us as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Victoria Polidoro.
Hi, good evening. Victoria Polidoro. I'm a partner at Rodenhouse & Shaw. I'm here tonight on behalf of several businesses in the village of Rhinebeck, including Foster's Coach House Tavern. I prepared a letter which I'm going to hand out, which has several comments about the zoning law, but tonight I'm just going to focus on two issues: noise and signs, and not the short-term rentals, because those are coming out from what I understand. So even without the short-term rentals, I don't think that this law is ready to be adopted tonight, and I hope that the board will take the time to consider all the comments you're receiving and not move ahead with adoption. I do think there are some issues. So the first issue to address is the ban on outdoor amplified music. For anyone that's ever dined in the village outdoors, the outdoor music it's a nice amenity. You hear it when you're eating, but you don't really hear it when you're walking on the sidewalk. I don't know what the village's intention is with this section of law. Perhaps it's to reduce noise pollution. But we've consulted a noise engineer. Sorry, excuse me, I'm just out of breath. We consulted a noise engineer, and he advises us that this prohibition is going to have no impact whatsoever on noise levels within the village. I have a letter explaining that, which I am going to hand to you. But for example, he says that if there's two noise sources that are 70 dBA each, which is the sound of a loud truck, they don't combine cumulatively to become 140 dBA. You only add 3 extra dBA, so 70 plus 70, you're really only hearing 73. And so the 70 is what he believes the traffic is on Route 9 near the intersection, Route 9 and Market Street. So adding outdoor music, unless it's going to be as loud as a truck, is going to make no difference whatsoever on noise levels in the village. He concludes that it's clear that the sound level of the speakers utilized provide a pleasant experience to diners, could not possibly present an adverse impact on the public using the adjacent sidewalk. In order for that to occur, the speakers would need to be presenting sound levels on par with heavy truck and motorcycle traffic and or freeway level sounds. And so if you're trying to limit noise, the way to do this is to maybe prohibit outdoor music past a certain time at night if the concern is residents. But in some cases, such as Foster's, there aren't even apartments nearby. So that music's not bothering anyone. We also think it's important for the village to consider a cabaret license for live outdoor music. You can consider it on a seasonal basis so that people can have bands. You can have certain restrictions on it, time of day, etc. But to just prohibit it flat out is really impacting the businesses and impacting the people who enjoy going to those businesses. So we asked the village board to reconsider this prohibition, which will have little impact on the village, but will impact outdoor dining experiences for everyone in the village. The next issue is signs, and I know a few people have addressed this tonight. We're asking that the village consider legalizing historic signs within the village center district. There are a few iconic signs in the village, such as the Foster sign, Rhinebeck Hardware, the old Rhinebeck Pharmacy sign. They're iconic, they've been painted, they've been photographed, and when you see them, they really help create a sense of place of where you are. You know you're in a historic village, and that's part of its character. Right now, your sign law would propose a disincentive to maintain and repair these signs. It says signs must be brought into compliance when more than 25% of the material makeup is repaired. Now, repair is one of those words that means different things to different people. So if the sign is painted, over 25% of the sign, does that mean the sign has to come down? If they change the light bulb one year, paint it the next year, does that equal 25%? Is it cumulative? Is it over time? Is it at one time? Overall, what this does is it creates a disincentive to maintain those signs just so that people can keep them up. What we propose is that the board allow the planning board to issue a special use permit for historic signs. If they have historic merit or aesthetic merit, they could be legalized so that they can stay without being subject to the onerous non-conforming use provisions. Excuse me. We think that would be a fair way to deal with some of these signs which don't otherwise conform. And that's all I have. Oh, let me just add the enforcement nightmare. John Fenton, as good as he is, he's going to have a lot of trouble going out and figuring out which signs have had 25% repairs and which haven't. And it's just an unnecessary burden. And here's my letter. Happy to answer any questions if you have any.
What was the percentage before? I'm trying to find that section. What do we have before, you know? 12019.
It looks like it's a new addition, but even if it's not, historic signs are still not represented. They're still have to come into compliance.
Right.
We can tell whether it's variances.
Yes, no, you know how variances are.
Variances are.
Well, so area variances will address the size of the sign. There's something like interior illumination, which the Foster sign does have those neon lights. Those would usually would require a use variance, and those are just impossible to obtain. So some of these issues can be addressed through area variances, but that's a whole nother process. It's an expense to the board. And the thing that businesses really crave the most is consistency. And so they like to understand what they're going to be subject to. And so having them go for discretionary approvals to keep a sign or because they want to paint a sign, it really just makes life difficult for everyone. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
John and Barry? I'm sorry if I didn't get your name.
So, my husband actually thought he was signing us in, and then quickly realized, oh, we're going to say something. And I wasn't going to say something. However, yeah, sorry, Delise Berry. However, I just, in listening to people talk, certain things felt really relevant to me from my perspective based on my rental experience that I just thought I'd briefly share with you guys. We moved up here about 6 years ago, but I've been coming to Rhinebeck through my parents having a house here since I was a very young child. And very quickly, as a mom with very young kids, I really wanted to begin working again. And the way that I started making money so that I could be home and raise my kids was through helping some of my mom's clients rent out their houses when they were not there. This was not their business. They were seeking someone to manage and represent them and make sure that things are handled when they're not there and renting it out. So this was creating a supplemental income for them, but more importantly also for me, even though I didn't have a rental of my own. Very quickly after buying our first house, the first thing we did was transform a suite in our house so that we could rent it out, because all of this was supplementing our ability to survive, to have, right, that American dream of time and financial freedom, of raising your babies, thriving, helping your community. I mean, it's so inclusive, it's so valuable. Going on and on, I now have multiple rentals all over Rhinebeck, including renting out our primary house and a guest space. So I understand all of these facets and all of the angles to it. And honestly, the most important part, as people were saying before, about how are these things regulated, how are they controlled, who's watching over the homes or the people. The point is, yeah, it makes sense to have an owner nearby or a manager, someone involved in the process. But if you really look at the stats, I mean, I'm talking hundreds and hundreds of rentals that I've probably handled, incidents happening less than I can count on one hand. And the people that stay at these homes, leaving with such strong impression about this community, about these businesses, and allowing us homeowners to also thrive and create our businesses is so valuable, and it really needs to be heard. So I am definitely for off-hosting, non-host rentals, but I think managers are really valuable. That's my big. That's my mom about it.
Vicki Hall.
I'm gonna pass.
Oh,
I'm
you had me
angry.
especially put you on the list.
I know, but I'm very angry and I'm afraid to say bad things.
Okay.
Sorry, thanks.
Martha Gershon.
I had a question, actually.
Really? All right, Joe. Never mind how I understand that, don't pass.
I was concerned about the decibel regulation, and I was, not knowing the history of this revision, I was surprised that the decibel level was raised rather than staying the same or something else. And from people's comments, I wonder whether perhaps you could explain whether the concern was more from the business district angle rather than the residential streets, because it seems to me there would be a difference in the noise level one would prefer or tolerate on a residential street than what might be acceptable in a business area. So I just wondered why the rebel level was raised, and maybe it had to do with the businesses. I don't know. That's my question.
That was in response to public comment in December, when we had a lot of restaurant owners and folks like that that thought it was too strict, so we raised it 10 decibels during the day and 10 decibels in the evening.
I see. But it would apply the way it's worded to residential streets as well, would it
Right,
not?
it does.
So I just wonder whether that might be a distinction that would be useful to make. Thank you.
Change your mind, Vicki?
I'm sorry, I did, I changed my mind, thank you.
Easy now, easy.
All right, so thank you. Hi, Pat. Hi, Howie. Third generation local. I own 3 houses in the town, one in the village, one in Rhinecliff, one outside. I am a business owner. I do actually also work at a local business here. I'm sure you all know that. The basement apartment on my South Street house is an Airbnb. It is a primary source of income. I am not there every single day, but I am there a lot. I plan on moving in there. However, I will also, on the lovely things that happen in our town, like the Rhinebeck Fair and the Crafts Fair, which many moons ago when I worked at a really fun restaurant called Skemmy's, that weekend of the craft fair was the busiest weekend we ever had. Rhinebeck is a tourist town. I'm sorry if our Airbnbs are hurting local bed and breakfast, but I think we can all work together because there are more people coming in than we have space to put them. The traffic stinks. God, I hate driving through town on the weekend. I really don't like the tourists personally, but I really enjoy the fact that they bring an income in for us. I'm about to be a single mom. I have to figure out how I'm going to feed my child and pay these exorbitant taxes. I am a business owner and my business is failing because I cannot make enough money to pay all of the taxes that are involved in owning a business in the state of New York, this beautiful great state. It's never ending. You made a huge point. Let's all work together. You can please some of the people some of the time, but not all of the people all of the time. And yes, you're going to have people that make noise and that upset everything, no matter what you do. Let's work together to try to figure it out. Don't squash us. I'm just trying to make a living, trying to keep a roof over my son's head and food on the table. and still stay in this town that I grew up in. I'm proud to be a Rhinebeck Indian. I don't know what else to say. Let's work together. Let's make this work out. They're not vagrants. That's a word that I heard. That's ridiculous. These are really wonderful people coming into our beautiful little town and spending their beautiful money. Let's take it. And that's all we have. Okay? That's all. I'm sorry. I tried to.
Yes, the list of comments except for Mr. McGuire in regard to the code.
Thank you, sir. I wanted to address the noise situation also. With the record number of people coming to Rhinebeck now, and everybody that lives there, we know this. We've seen this change. Mr. Kurthoy's, when the light used to go on blinker up here, and the town would shut down at 11 o'clock at night. True story. So, we have a tourist town here. We have record numbers of people coming here. We have people supporting these businesses here. With the Airbnbs, rentals, people are coming here to support this village. People want to go out to dinner. They want to sit down and have a little nice dinner. And in the background, you hear some music up there. That's not hurting anybody. If it's 2 o'clock in the morning and the band is screaming down here in Four Corners, I would suggest we do something about it. But for when people are sitting out there for dinner, till 10, 11 o'clock, whatever you want to make it, with background music being piped out there while they're having a beautiful dinner, spending their money in the village of Rhinebeck, we got to help these businesses out. I see there probably has to be some more communication between the board, the businesses, than what I hear tonight. I think it's got to be more open to both sides. They've got terrific taxes they pay. They're trying to run clean, beautiful businesses here to attract people and keep people coming to Rhinebeck to support everybody. And the things that Vicky said. The B&Bs, the Airbnb, if everybody's, I don't know if you're aware, what happens is, if I'm going to rent my place out to Mr. Bassett, I can go online and look up his history of renting to any one of you here. And if Mr. Bassett has bad reviews, I can just say, no, you're not coming. Or I can look at there, oh, Mr. Bassett was a wonderful guest, he did this, blah, blah, blah. Mr. Bassett, you're welcome to come to my home. That's how it works, in case you weren't aware of.
They also charge the taxes and stuff too. I forgot to say that, sorry. Everything will be done.
Again, I think we need more communication, not more rules. Don't put the burden more on these people that are struggling here to make a living, to make this the beautiful village that it is. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dave.
Excuse me, Mayor, I didn't realize there was a sign-up sheet. Can I still speak or?
Sure.
Yeah, same here.
Just announce your name.
Of course. Sorry, this time I'll sign up. Hi, I'm Alicia Lenhart, and my husband and I own Grand Cru Beer and Cheese Market here in the village. And I wanted to speak about the noise and the decibel rating. I want to echo Kirk's comments that he spoke earlier, who owns the shelter. That they're way too low for a business district. I mean, I have no doubt and believe him that he was at the farmer's market and it registered at 110. There's no reason why there can't be some music in the evenings. Providing live music is a great benefit to the community, especially the guests. I personally email all the B&Bs and the inns when we have music, and they often send their residents to us to hear the music. I also don't have an objection to having speakers, at Foster's or something like that during the day, during the early evening. So I just think there should be, and someone said it earlier, a distinction between the business districts, and we all know where those are, and then the homes. Surely, we don't want somebody having, a private party with a live music, down on Chestnut Street perhaps, and going to 2 o'clock in the morning. That should be prohibited. But I think there just needs to be some separation between truly the business area and then where the homes are located. And in terms of the Airbnbs and what's happening here, I want to know that special committee, are the people on the committee, is that published somewhere?
Yes, it is.
Okay, on your website?
Do we have all the names on the website now? We can.
Can that be, okay.
Yes.
So I'm
Is that
curious-
what you want, the names?
Yeah, I'm curious who's
Yeah,
on
they're
it.
made up of 2 from the planning board, 1 from zoning, a liaison from the village board, a business representative, an advocate for vacation rentals, and non-advocate.
Okay, I just want to make a couple of brief comments. As a business owner that serves drinks, I can tell you that we are losing business to other communities where there's great places to stay overnight and where you can walk to your restaurants and bars. I can tell you that we are being outpaced by Beacon and Hudson in particular. They have beautiful boutique hotels that have been built in the past couple of years. And when I say beautiful, probably one of the nicest places I've ever stayed was William Farmer and Sons in Hudson. We have nothing like that. However, so until we catch up with those other communities, we are losing tourist business. I can tell you that. I've seen it. I've seen our demographic change over the past 5 years that we've owned Grand Cru. Also, renting a home is, when you travel, it's really a preference. I personally love to rent a home when I go on vacation over a hotel. I like to have a full kitchen, a washer and dryer, especially if you have children. It's really a personal preference. And I can tell you that the homes that we have to rent here in the village and just outside in the town are beautiful properties. And I think that people are gravitating towards them because they're that spectacular and well-maintained, and modern furnishings and gorgeous bedding and towels. And that is more about, keeping up with what people's preferences are today. I'm fully supportive having, you must live in the area in order to rent out your house or have a manager. I think that's legitimate. But I can say that, we need to work together because they provide a real service. And my husband and I and our staff are always asking, where are you coming from? Thank you for visiting Rhinebeck. Where are you staying? Do you need some advice on where to have dinner and so forth? And so many times people are staying in private homes, and they're some of the nicest people and the nicest visitors that we see coming into our town. So please, the special committee and all of you, keep that in mind. It's a business. They should pay their taxes. If they have to be inspected by the Board of Health, like a bed and breakfast does, that could be, a stipulation. But I think that they're very much warranted, and until some of those other boutique properties are actually break ground and actually materialize, if they ever do, we definitely need them. We need these beds, we need it for our community, and the business community definitely needs it. I can tell you that first and foremost. Thank you.
I'm James Sololio from the Art of Building. I think a lot of you know us from our signs that are all over town. Mr. Clark and Decker know us primarily because we're largely, our primary business is actually historic preservation, where we take the most downtrodden and beaten up houses, not only in Rhinebeck, but in the whole region, and fix them up and make them into something that they weren't, or they had previously been. So, just first of all, how many people, just forgetting all the little differences, but how many people here are generally in favor of vacation rentals? Yeah, so we're generally coming out in support of them, even though we have some differences among us. So, I think it's a pretty important issue. First and foremost, this is a major economic driver for our community. I don't know, and I'm not saying this, arrogantly, I'm saying I don't know if any of us really appreciate how enormous an economic driver this is for Rhinebeck. Whatever generally disparaging comments about there were 50 or 70 or whatever in the town of Rhinebeck vacation rentals, that also means there are 50 or 70 buildings and rooms and houses that are churning people through here spending money. I don't know one of the women here who's made, the last woman who spoke, who made a great point. The people that are coming, these are families by and large, in our experience. They're families. They're going out, they're hungry to find things to do and hungry to find places to spend their money. They're going to all of our restaurants, they're going to all our historic events. They're going to our stores and they're disappointed that there's so many empty ones. They're hungry to spend more. And you know what, this is a type of tourism that we've learned, Darren and I, my partner and I, does not come to Rhinebeck if we don't have these vacation rentals. The people that are renting our houses, if they don't have our houses to rent, they're renting houses in other towns. People don't do vacation rentals as, oh wait, we're not going to do that, so we're going to stay at the beach. It's just not the type of tourism that comes. They come here to have a family experience, to have a house, to have a kitchen, to have a washing machine, and often to spend a weekend, if not a week, and sometimes even longer. So I think that one of the things that hasn't been addressed is sort of the economic impact of these decisions. So that's point number one. Point number two is let's realize that vacation rentals this is a new economy issue. This is not unlike Uber. This is not unlike, Zillow. This is not like all these other disruptive technologies that have sort of hit our world in the last decade with the advent of technology. And the laws that we have on the books and the general instincts we have don't adequately address them. Hence the need, and I thank you so much for making the special committee and making that happen, because we absolutely need to really think through all the various nuances around this. Because basically, there's been animals in the village for 100 years, 200 years. We've thought through most of the issues. We might change our views, but there's been animals in the village. There hasn't been Airbnb or VRBO or any other vacation rentals. So let's appreciate that it's a new economy issue with enormous nuance, and it needs a lot of attention. It needs a special committee to address that. Lastly, and I think this is more of a process issue, is I think some of the skepticism, and there's disagreements among us, and I think we need to work them out and figure it out, but let's be clear that we need to be comfortable as a community that the decisions that are being made in a fair and equitable way, that it's being done by people that are really genuinely interested in hearing the feedback of the community, that are hearing the multiple viewpoints, and are willing to strike a reasonable compromise in terms of the outcome. I think some of the skepticism that's been expressed tonight is that we're not entirely confident that even the special committee, as much as we appreciate it, that there's really an open forum for dialogue and open inclusion about all these issues. I think it's incredibly important for us to be committed to that and be committed to having this special committee. I mean, one of the points that Kevin raised at the beginning of this, which I, frankly, even being involved in this, I don't even understand, is Kevin claims that these somehow haven't been removed from the current ordinance. I don't understand this, but I'm confused in part. So I want to make sure that this committee is trying to be focused, or this entire process is focused on creating a real world, commercial solution, and not sort of a backdoor to social engineering. This is the Rhinebeck that I want, and so therefore I'm going to use the town zoning ordinances to create the Rhinebeck that I want. Because at the end of the day, it is an evolving issue. It is a new economy issue. It's an important economic driver for us as a community, as well as a lot of us individually. So, thanks for your time.
Yes, Bob.
I didn't say anything about the noise issue.
Bob, could you come up?
Sure.
Speak, please.
I just feel that whatever the decibel level is going to be, that it should be the same for businesses and homes. But that being said, I do feel that the present decibel level that you're proposing is way too low. When I hear that a simple truck going by is louder than what our, posts. I don't know if I'm so into having live bands going at night, but certainly piped-in music at a certain decibel level is something I would support. It's interesting because we just heard one business owner say that we're losing business to Hudson and other places, but before her, we heard another business owner saying there's no place to park, she can't stand driving in the weekend. The village is packed with people, so I personally don't feel like we're losing so much business to other towns. I mean, if we didn't have the parking lot that CVS unofficially gave us, I don't know what we'd do. I was in there today picking up a prescription. There were 4 people in the store, yet there were 52 cars in the parking lot. So,
The distinction is those
Excuse me,
people
wait.
are day
Let me
trippers. I'm just saying, the
So-
distinction is
Could
those
you come
folks
up to
are,
the speaker then when Bob's done, please?
okay, I just want to
Thank you.
clarify. Okay.
Thank you.
So, I don't feel like we're losing business to other towns. I don't know how we could possibly take any more. We've already become a restaurant mecca now. The people come in here from all over the place just to go to our restaurants, which is great. So that's how I feel about the decibel levels, just wanted to tell you.
I think it should be raised.
Any other comments
Yes, I'll have
before we
one more.
close?
What we're experiencing is there's a lot of day trippers in Rhinebeck for sure. That's why we see a lot of traffic during the day and so forth. They're not staying over because we don't have places for them to stay where everything's booked. And I can tell you we are losing business, and Hudson, Beacon, and to a certain extent Kingston are outpacing us with overnight travelers. Okay, there's statistics on it. Check with Mary Kay Verba of Dutchess County Tourism. I've spoken to her about this at length. It is a real thing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Sure. Absolutely, Tim.
John Clark, was on the zoning commission that helped put these things together. And I was concerned about one issue no one's talked about, adult uses. That was in the code draft that we wrote. From what I understand, the village attorney took it out. I know there's touchy legal issues about adult uses, but if you take it out, then it seems to me any adult use could come and claim their retail use and come into the village. The committee thought that that shouldn't be allowed to happen as adult uses are defined, and defined them so that they were separate from general retail, and then just did not allow them in the districts that were in the code. Now, my imagination is that the village attorney said that that would be illegal, that you can't just ban them because of court cases.
So that you can have limitations on, distance for tattoo parlors from
Right.
playgrounds and schools and things like that, but I didn't think, we didn't have the wherewithal to sit together and come up with, something that specific that might be, 3 or 4 paragraphs or pages long, so, because we brought it in, we introduced it in, he wanted to strike it.
I know, but the point I'm making is by striking it, you're opening the door to anywhere in the village commercial district. Somebody coming in and you're not having the ammunition to stop it.
But then you have to reconvene and come up with something. We can, if you want.
There might be a simple solution if you worked at it a little bit. I'm making the suggestion that you shouldn't just eliminate it because that opens us up. I mean, we have had that happen in adjoining communities. So it's not like it's an empty threat. It could happen in the village. I wouldn't like to see it here. So I think that should be looked at again rather than just thrown out because you don't have time to deal with it.
Thank you. All right, this time I'd like to make a motion to close the comment section for the public hearing. Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstain? Thank you, everyone, for your comments to this important code revision. I think it's important to note that this cannot be voted on this evening. For adoption, it requires, review and also review by county to be able to move forward on that. So I believe the protocol says we can, is it to keep it closed or
No, you can close, you should close it tonight.
close?
You can close.
Okay, close the public. I have a
What about if we have comments, board?
So,
When can we make our comments?
Yeah, you can make them in discussion.
Okay.
we can do it now if you would like.
Okay. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay. I kind of have questions too. You guys might be able to answer. A fence. I'm just confused. If you want to build a fence that's 36 inches high? In the front.
Anything above that is requires a permit.
Okay, and if there's,
And isn't that to jive with the other, with our building code?
right, but then if you have a fence that's, what was it, 40 inches or higher fences can go in the back, right?
Yes.
And if you have a fence that you want to replace that's higher than 36 inches in the back, what do you have to do? Do you need a building permit for that?
I don't think we changed that.
We didn't change that.
Well, there's underlined. Okay, 120-14, number 8. Fences, gates, walls, vegetative screening. Towards the rear plane of the principal structure on the side that abuts the street shall not exceed 4 feet in height. Fences, gates, walls along the rear and side walls shall not exceed 6 feet in height. Just because it's underlined, maybe I'm confused. Is
Well, that, I believe that the side and rear has not been changed. It's just changed the front.
I just defined it as the front plane of the house rather than it was the front of the, or it was a distance from the property line fence. And the determination was to establish the front as being the front plane of the house.
Okay, well, I just didn't know because it's underlined, it's changed. Something's changed.
It is changed, but it's,
That part is.
but that part is, that's still consistent.
Okay. Now, I got a question on noise. Where did everybody go?
Once you speak,
Okay. Okay. I Googled this. I gotta find it here. Let me see here. A lawnmower is 90 decibels.
Hold on.
Yeah.
How far away are you from the lawnmower when you're measuring?
I don't know, I'm just going online looking this up.
Right, but that's one of the deceptive parts of this, because we specifically have the measurement from the property line.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're right next to a lawnmower, yes, you know, that if you're in the middle of the farmer's market, then the noise is gonna be greater than if you're at the property line. And the idea is that, you know, people can make whatever noise they want within their own property. It's that the noise needs to be contained within their property or restricted in such a way that it does not invade other people.
Okay.
So, you know, whether it's 70, you know, we came up with 80, I believe, based upon what we saw in terms of the standards other communities have. And we had about a half a dozen or so. But Red Book was one of them that we used, and we actually used a higher standard than Red Book. Right.
Okay.
I don't know that there's an exact number that really fits, because not everybody hears the same noise the same way. You know, some of us who are older could
probably turn down our hearing aids and not have to worry about it at all, where others are more sensitive. So we were just trying to establish some sort of parameters in terms of noise, and there were no parameters in the prior code.
It was basically a reasonable standard.
Right, there were no parameters, there was no definition, so there was no way of really establishing any sort of enforcement.
I'll just go. Are you done? I don't want to interrupt.
Well, you can talk about the noise.
Well, I guess the question is, since you guys were deep in the code, what did you think about the idea of having separate noise regulations for the business district versus outside in the residential zone? Is that a viable?
Well, here's the flying note on that, which is there are people that live in the business district. You know, that, you know, some of us have been here for a little while, remember something called the Firebird?
Yeah.
Right? And that was kind of one of the early times when the noise thing came up because they were back where the Mexican place is now. And they played loud music that bothered the people that lived in the apartments on Garden Street. You know, so again, we need some sort of parameter in terms of defining. And I don't know what the number is, what the correct number is. I don't know if there is a correct number, but there needs to be something there.
Right. No, I'm right.
And again, the problem is that our general business district allows for apartments, allows for people to reside there. Do they give up the right to some level of noise constraint just because they live there?
I think they would, if they're living in a downtown village or a downtown city, they have to expect a little bit more noise than they are on the outskirts.
Okay.
I think we should make a distinction between city and village here.
Okay, we'll just talk about village.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
But I think, Harry, it's like, yeah, like if you move into a central business district, you
Yeah.
can expect that it's going to be noisier than if you're on a half acre or something.
I think it would be reasonable to set different limits for the residential district versus the commercial district. I don't have any problem with that. And, but I think that, and there might be something in here instead of operating any source of sound, maybe it should say any sort of steady sound. So it's not like a truck going by is violating the rule and you gotta run after them with a decibel counter, you know? It's the sort of thing where somebody runs a lawnmower, you know, for half an hour on Sunday morning. It's the sort of thing where it's a steady noise, somebody's, you know, using a garage as a repair shop and uses jackhammers steadily, or, you know, something that would, the only reason this is going to get enforced is if you have a complaint, and then they have a number that they can say, okay, you're in violation. It's not going to happen that John Fenton's going to be running around the village with a decibel counter trying to catch people. So I think there's a useful factor to have a number so that if there's a noise complaint, you can say, okay, this is unreasonable or not. And if you want to set the limits different from commercial to residential, I think that's a plausible way of dealing with it.
I would think the commercial would be a little higher than residential. Yeah. And maybe higher than what you're suggesting.
But if we put it higher than this, then, 90 decibels that's loud.
We did look at everybody else did. You go on Google and you find different sites. We found one that we thought was reliable, and that was similar to the codes that we looked at for people who have done this for a while and had experience in enforcement or whatever. And the first numbers is what we came into, so I think maybe that would be for residential and this would be for commercial. Or maybe you want to go a little higher in commercial, I don't know. But
that's what I was
when
thinking.
you go to the decibel counts for at a certain distance, which is I think what we found.
Right.
These are pretty, allow a lot of pretty high stuff. These aren't low decibel counts.
Along with the differences, though, I think there should be a time restraint.
Well, I like the idea of doing the steady sound requirement.
So I think we're talking about a lot of different things here.
Well, one is.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm in favor of background music for the little, for restaurants outdoors, and and some type of live music. I've been talking about this for about 5 years. Allowing some of the businesses to do live music, once in a while. Not everybody have live music every night, every weekend or whatever. Somehow it could be staggered.
See, that's the trick, is the somehow.
Right, so that's...
Coming up with a somehow.
Well, what we came up with was a permit, right? Pat, if somebody wants live music, they would fill out a event form. Yeah.
That's what we modified several months, to allow it, to just specifically allow that to occur at a restaurant.
Outside use for outside.
For outside, yeah.
Yes.
We have a new reference to that somewhere.
That's what we do too.
Yeah.
There's a reference, but there's no corresponding regulations for it.
Do you have a code section? Or?
I mean, you have people on the street playing their musical instruments. I know legally we can't stop that.
13A.
13A.
But a business who pays taxes can't have outside music. What do you think about that, Ray?
I like music, so you.
Okay.
Well, but they can have it as an event, they schedule for an event, they can also have, they can have.
Except as approved by the village board of trustees for special events.
Right.
Oh, right.
There's a whole event. Right, the events code is a separate.
But that doesn't allow speakers in the radio, that's just live music.
Right, that's a separate thing.
Right, but there's no event code to back that up. Which you should adopt at the same time.
You mean for speakers?
Well, speakers should, we think they should be allowed.
It says, shall not be permitted to have outside speakers or outdoor live music, except as approved by the village board of trustees for specific events. So they can have outside speakers and live music with an events permit.
Right, but I mean, every night for a restaurant can't be a special event if they just want outdoor patio music. And actually, I read that differently than you. Maybe I read the comment different. I read no amplified music and live music for a special event.
There's no comment.
Well,
The comment
I read
is
it.
until after live music.
I mean, we could strike subparagraph 2. And then have the different standards for decibels for commercial and for residential.
Or will we have a separate thing saying speakers are allowed at a certain decibel
Well, if we,
for restaurants? I think that's a distinguish.
if we struck 2, we strike the restriction on speakers.
Yeah, but if you strike 2, then you're striking the outdoor live music with the event form.
Well, you're allowing outdoor live music.
Yeah.
Whether it's live music or speaker music, it's still sound, it's still noise.
Right.
But we still have
I mean, to some people it's music, to other people it's noise.
we have the
That's-
decibel levels.
The other component that you get to deal with is given the number of restaurants, if they all have, we don't know what would happen in terms of they all decide to play their own different music.
You mean live music outside?
Live music outside.
Right, I understand that.
If we don't have some sort of parameters, right?
Howie, I think if you remember when we discussed this too, it was not limited to just restaurants, it was really businesses who wanted to have outdoor music in front of their business establishment, whether they were a restaurant or not.
We
Remember
have
that?
a real estate.
Right,
business.
right.
And so, I mean, as a board,
Yes.
previously we discussed that and said that would create too much if we allowed it, opened it up and did for one and not for the other.
Everybody would only just behave reasonably, we wouldn't need any of this.
So it is a difficult thing to enforce if you want to do it, because you can't just say only X restaurant is allowed to do it, right? And not allow any business in the business district to then do it. Because we've had those requests.
I understand. So how can we compromise here?
Well, the compromise, I think, is they did increase the noise decibel level.
Yeah, but what about
Well,
speakers?
with the noise decibel level, if the sound, if it doesn't violate the noise decibel level that we agree upon, then whether that noise is coming from speakers or from live music or from people whooping it up for whatever reason, do we really care?
So,
Yeah, but there is generally, live music is gonna be louder than background music and on a patio.
Right, but again, if the parameters are established appropriately, you know, live music could actually be a guitar player, somebody playing an acoustic guitar, and the amplified music could be somebody blaring through speakers.
But there is a noise level regardless of
Right,
whether
the
you're
noise
playing
level
acoustic guitar or an
would then
acoustic.
control
Right.
the way that it would potentially disrupt or annoy other people off the property.
Right.
so if we struck subparagraph 2, we still have the decibel protections.
I would suggest you leave in 2, but only have it apply to outdoor live music. So you have some control over outdoor live music, but you allow, background music consistent with your decibel levels in paragraph 1.
That sounds reasonable.
And then the other piece would be that
Can you
you
give-
might amend your special events code to allow for some way that a restaurant could apply for, live music every Friday, Saturday, and Saturday night, or on a consistent basis, as long as they don't violate
The noise.
the noise ordinance. And make
So, but we
that,
need someone to draft this. Can you write something up for subparagraph 2, replace subparagraph 2?
All I'm talking about is striking the words outside speaker or.
Strike outside.
Those 3 words, outside speaker or.
So the permit is only applied to outdoor live music, and the outdoor speakers are folded into paragraph 1 in terms of just being controlled by, if they're getting too loud and people are complaining, you have the right to go over and check the decibel levels.
right, and then the village board could respond to the concerns in terms of live music
Right, on a
by changing the
individual
event,
basis.
by maybe tweaking the event code.
So, I don't know the history of this then, you don't allow outdoor live music, pretty much.
Except by event.
Except by event.
Somebody
Well, no, I know that's what this says, but is that,
We have it in the past.
we're not changing anything?
Well, we haven't, part of that is because I don't think we didn't have the decibel limit, we didn't have the mechanism in terms of controlling it, so we made it very binary, either you could or you couldn't, and we decided you couldn't.
Right.
Now, this would allow for, with having the decibel limit, would allow for it to exist as long as it's within established parameters. And that might be the compromise.
And maybe a time limit at the live
Well,
music too.
Yeah, when you do a special permit, you can say it has to be done by 10:30 or whatever.
Yeah.
So that would compensate for the.
Right.
That would be an event application, they got the time, because it's right on there now, the times.
We probably have the discretion to.
Because the way this started, as I remember, is that there was a live band playing at what used to be the Star Restaurant.
Well,
And then the neighbors to the south or to the north complained. And so the village board said, you can't do that without approval.
But it's funny how
And there was nothing in the code that would allow them to approve it.
there was another restaurant that had music. It was faced one way, nobody complained. But when the music was faced the other way, people complained. So that's a consideration too, the way that the music is facing.
Well, again, it has to do with leaving the property. I mean, there are places where, the music can be played where, like if you go to the barbecue place where they have a house right next door, then the impact of the music can be different than at Foster's, where you're fairly isolated from any residents.
And the village board could take that into account when they approve the permit. Because the barbecue place was one where we really had trouble struggling with their desire to have stuff in their backyard patio, a smoker and everything else, and somebody lives like right there next to the fence.
Right.
And they actually, the iteration before the barbecue place wanted to have acoustical music, but we didn't want to put the village in the position in terms of having to monitor what was being played on a regular basis and whether it was amplified or not, and dealing with that. So again, we chose and were able to get away with that binary yes or no rather than this, which is a more nuanced, more.
But now we have a decibel level.
Now we have a decibel.
So the question really is then, do we all agree on a decibel level of 80 decibels, you know, for a business district?
I don't know that we're ever going to all agree. I mean, this group might agree.
I think the wireless AT&T or Sprint was going to do they gave us specs on the generator, because we asked for that, and it was 78 decibels. So that's loud.
And where?
But that's a steady, that's again, in fact, I think more of a steady, that's a steady
Right.
noise.
The first paragraph should say something about
Steady.
steady or time,
Consistent.
non-intermittent or something like that.
Okay, but then it says 80 decibels between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. Is that going to, should that be changed?
In
If
the
we're gonna
business
allow-
district, maybe allow it until 10 p.m. or
Yeah, I would like to see it till 10 p.m. I think for a business
so we're
district.
going to separate it out for the business and the residential,
No,
or do it until 10.
yeah, I think it was, I like your idea of being consistent, and,
Okay.
I mean, that's my opinion, right, of,
Yeah.
for both, to be consistent and leave it to the same hour.
So you're saying 7 and 10, 7 to 10 for both, for anywhere, just leave. Just change, you just want to change 8 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Correct.
Okay.
Can we let ask a question?
Can she ask the question?
Sure.
How did the decibel levels get introduced? I mean, you know, we have far less music being played in this town now than we did 10 years ago. So I'm just wondering, how many complaints did you actually have about this?
Well, basically every time there was outside music.
Oh, outside?
Yeah, outside, yeah.
Yeah.
If you keep it within your building, nobody cares.
Right.
You can
Yeah,
play it
but
as
in the
loud as you
In
want.
the summertime, the doors are open, like, you know.
Well, that's not keeping it within your,
I'm just saying, like, who's gone to see live music in Rhinebeck on the board in the past year? I'm just curious.
I have.
You mean
I went to Mountain Jam.
No,
I've had it in my house.
No, you're in Rhinebeck.
No, I've had it in my house. I've actually hosted events in my house
But I
where
mean,
we've
going
had
to one of the
professional
businesses that
musicians.
could stand to lose business, you know.
But it's done so that it doesn't,
Yeah, I think it's important for people to
Impact.
realize where it's being measured at, as you
Right.
mentioned. It's not being measured in the middle of the music event, it's being measured at the edge of the property of the event, you know, where the level is, so.
So for me, that's at our front door, and if we have our door open, we're probably gonna be in violation.
well, you'll be in violation, but again, the only issue would be if somebody were to complain. It's
In
not
5
that,
years, no one's complained.
right, well,
And it's going until 10 o'clock.
And now it's gonna measure your noise.
And now you have till 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I mean, our music typically goes to 11, and I can tell you, I mean, remember, there's, you know, the sidewalks roll up to 11:30, so I mean, you know,
Well, the
there's
police are
nothing
down
going on.
at 11:32.
They're on
After
one
that, it's okay.
but the light doesn't go blinking anymore, right?
That's true.
Right.
It could though, trust me. All right, I just curious, I don't know, I just don't, like I said, there's far less music being played today than when I moved here 15 years ago.
And I think this adds, what I like about it is it adds a lot of clarification to what was not there before. Because before it was, you know, it was very arbitrary as to what was considered too loud.
Right, but I mean, the farmer's market is 100, I mean, how can you?
But that's in the big,
But again,
it's in the
measured
middle
at-
of the market.
Measure it at the street.
Well, then,
Measured
I
the-
think there should be some more measuring going on.
It's the
before we
adjacent
set-
property line.
Yeah, and Red Hook's business district is nothing compared to ours. We use them as a baseline, you know, maybe.
We didn't just use that, they,
That
they,
village doesn't have noise law. Well, they said they used it as a
There
baseline.
was just one of many.
Yeah, okay, so the others were
Well,
like
we got the performance
Saratoga
standards for
Springs or New Paltz.
it was a town
or-
standard.
Yeah,
Yeah, probably was a town.
yeah. I just think there just needs to be more research done. I think it's too arbitrary at this point. I just might put it out there.
I don't think it's arbitrary at all. I think if you go in and you look at sample codes where they're controlling it, it's in this neighborhood.
I mean, I'd be willing to try it, and you know, if it got out of control, if just people were running around with decibel meters and calling the police, I mean, we can change it, you know, but I don't, it does create a standard.
Yes, Meg?
I know that the tree stuff was not part of, wasn't on the radar really of this zoning law, and I just wonder how I can help to get some of this introduced, so.
Could we finish this one and then finish this discussion?
Yep.
You know, so I would like to, you know, at least come to some, what we're gonna do about noise. You know, and I think we've made some significant modifications to allow it here. And from a board level, is there anybody that has any difference of opinion?
On this particular?
Yes, on noise, and how we modified it.
Or you could add the word steady to the first paragraph.
Yeah, that was number one. And then remove, in paragraph 2, removing outside speakers, and then change, being consistent, you know, for the 80 decibels and up to 10 p.m., correct?
Yep. So I can write a memo to you guys, just confirming that,
Right. Well, we're gonna,
or
you
an
know,
email. What's
yeah,
our
we're not gonna
objective?
vote, we can't vote tonight.
Right.
We can make adjustments, you know, to the code and enter them into this, and then, you know, vote at the next at our next board meeting, if we close the hearing.
Yes. That's
Right?
accurate, yes, because you closed the hearing.
You'll
Yes.
have to have another hearing if you make changes.
If
Well,
there's
we-
substantial.
Yeah.
Unless we strike stuff. We can make it less restrictive.
If it's less restrictive, no. If it's more restrictive, yes.
Right.
And I think this is less restrictive in terms of the noise. Do you agree?
This, yes, but we proposed some other changes as well that we hope you'll look at.
Yeah, well, you know, the signage thing. You want to-
And there's multifamily housing, I didn't talk about it tonight, but it's in the letter. I can go through the letter.
Yeah, I don't know why, we're not really in a rush to do this, like, get everything done tonight, right?
No.
It would be nice to get this done.
Oh, yeah, we will, in a month,
Because
in a
we've been
month.
working on it for like a
It's
decade.
been 10 years.
I know, but
Carol Neely was the mayor when we started this.
we're in the top of the ninth inning, so.
Yeah.
If you promise that we're in the top of the ninth.
No, but I mean, people, this is a public hearing, so people have comments, so we have to take them. into account.
Well, but, you know, we've taken the short-term rental out of that discussion.
Right.
With my, I know, in
With
the
the-
blizzard of what I was saying, I wanted to expand that language. Did you catch that, Tom? So we would change, just to make sure that the STR group is gonna just deal with short-term rentals, we would actually go back from special permit to permitted for the room rental homes. And this is an issue with the daycare. Strike that word because it doesn't make sense anymore, because we struck the definition of vacation rental. So the reference to vacation rental doesn't make sense, so we would just strike that. And then this sentence would be added.
Yeah.
Because there was a contradiction in the definitions of bed and breakfast establishment and room rental homes. So that new sentence would be, a bed and breakfast establishment may be allowed in an owner-occupied single-family dwelling, and a room rental home may be allowed in an owner-occupied single or two-family dwelling, subject to applicable special permit and site plan rules in compliance with the following standards. And then go to the, stop there. And then strike the words as a condition of the special permit in section 120-17I, because for room rental homes, if it's not SP, it's just permitted, then that wouldn't make sense.
Okay.
It's difficult. They really, really were adamant about carving out all the stuff that deals with short-term rentals and keeping it status quo. So,
Which I believe we've done with those modifications.
those modifications. I spent hours talking to the representative about this.
Okay, and I just have a couple more questions that a couple residents asked me, and you probably guys can just answer me quick. Are they going to be able to park on the front lawn?
On the lawn?
Somebody, can you park on your front lawn? Has that changed in the law, or?
Yeah, I think you can only park in the driveway.
I mean, like temporary.
Yeah.
Can you park on your front lawn and wash your
Yeah,
car?
different.
This is what somebody's,
No.
this is what a resident's asking me.
Well,
Just so, you know.
but there is somebody up on some.
Of course, they don't want to come here and answer questions, so I'm asking the questions.
All the time, and that-
Good question, Howard.
Okay, another question is, somebody has an existing driveway wider than 18 feet. Because there's,
It's pre-existing.
okay, it's pre-existing, that's all I want to know. Simple answers, that's it. It's not me, it's people asking me these questions, they want me to find out.
I'm gonna go measure your driveway.
People that hang out in this building, as a matter of fact. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so one of the other big subjects that I think we should talk about before moving on is the signage. And I think to address, since Victoria's here, the issue of historic signs. Because they're all lumped together. A sign is a sign is a sign. in the-
Right,
in the
so
code.
we don't have parameters established in terms of what's an historic sign and what's not an historic sign. Does it have to do with age? Does it have to do with somebody's personal predilection for that sign? You know, generally, I think we've looked at the Foster's sign, we specifically looked at the Rhinebeck hardware store sign. Historically, we've looked at signs that have some sort of community recognized historical character.
Stickle.
Right.
Well, that's still there. It's
Right.
Skemmy's sign is still up, isn't it?
The Skemmy's sign is
Ice cream
still
parlor, I
up,
think
even
it's
though it's
on.
no longer Skemmy's. You know, nobody, they didn't have to take that down. I think it was, when you look at the sign Joey Kurthois is talking about in terms of the liquor store, that's an internally illuminated sign on the west side of the building that violates the code, so he came in to do something on that building, and we said that he needed to change it to a conforming sign, which could be downlit.
Yeah, we just said all you have to do is turn off the light and put a gooseneck on it.
Right.
So it can still be lit up, it just can't be internally lit. That's not a historic sign. You know, it's a pretty ugly sign. But all we suggested is that they put in something that would be conforming rather than an internally lit sign. But it does conflict with Foster's, which is internally lit.
Well, Foster's is internally lit, and they exceed the size because they do have that billboard on the side. And so what happens is every time this business wants to come in, change a light, put in a bathroom upstairs, the question comes from board members, are you going to bring your signs into conformance? And so if the board members change and there's a new member and they decide, yes, it's time, we're not going to keep letting these go, then those historic signs may have to come down. And so we're really looking for a way for the village, with some parameters, maybe it's over 50 years old, to allow these signs to continue without being at the whim of who's ever on the planning board at that moment, because it does play into your business decisions. Is it worth it to put in the ADA bathroom, or is it not worth risking your iconic sign, which really helps your business? So those are the decisions that the businesses are making. And something like
Maybe you establish an application for an historic sign.
Yeah, I mean,
So somebody can apply to have, and maybe have somebody from the historical, come up with a 3-person committee that would review an application for a historic sign that would then make that determination.
well, would we allow it today with variance or not?
Yes, we have done it in the past. The hardware sign was allowed by variance, I remember that one. But she's right, Foster's illuminated sign
Could not get
could
that.
not get an area variance because it's technically not allowed by code. It's not just an area violation, it's the lighting that's the violation. You could just say the planning board has the right to do a special permit for a historic sign. And
But then,
you would be at the whim of the planning board,
But
because you can't
that would
deny a
only be
special.
at the whim at one planning board, because once it's granted, that special permit's gonna run with the property.
So you're-
Versus coming in, you know, every time you come in, you have to wonder whether it's gonna be part of the.
I'm the one that always tries to get rid of the billboard on the side of the
I know
building,
you do.
but I'm okay with the neon sign. Because I consider one historic and one not, and you shouldn't have two historic or semi-historic signs
They're both
on the
historic.
same property.
They've been there for 100 years.
You see the problem, right?
Yes,
there's a difference between the two signs.
I like the historic preservation part. I mean, I believe that my belief is that we should do everything we can to maintain that historic icon, if you want to call it an icon, within our village center. However we do that, I mean, I would defer to you guys to figure, to
Well,
do. But
you're saying you can add one sentence maybe to do.
Right, and make it clear it's not subject to that 25% limit, because, they're gonna paint it, and then it's gonna have to come down.
So we could add a J to the sign section.
Which
That's the number we don't have. That's the page here.
Yeah, no, the section 120-19 J.
Page 14.
It would be on page 17 of the clean draft.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sign repair, after sign repair.
Yeah, after sign repair and removal.
Yeah. You could say the planning board may grant a special permit.
Or a historical designation for,
Designation for what?
a sign, I don't think.
Or a
I'm not sure what parameters you establish.
Or a designation for a sign with historical character. Or
Right, but I think, that you might want to, require a recommendation from the Historical Society.
Yeah.
It's an existing historical sign, not simply a sign of historical character.
An existing. Right.
I can't put up an old-timey sign, a new old-timey sign.
Well, that was a whole separate issue.
For an existing sign.
Yeah.
As determined by.
Planning board.
Well,
In consultation with the Historical
Oh,
Society
yeah.
or something like that, so that there is some level of oversight.
In consultation with whom?
The Historical
Right,
Society.
The
right.
Village Historical Society?
Yeah.
The Rhinebeck Historical
Rhinebeck
Society.
Historical.
It's town and village. And then, obviously, you guys can decide this, but we would like language that makes it clear that once a special permit is granted, that sign is legal and is no longer a non-conforming sign.
I think that's true, right?
That should be
true.
true.
I think
That
that's
should be
a
true
true
based upon the language that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
unless it's removed. If you take it away and then try to bring it back.
And what if they're fixing it?
No, well,
That needs to be.
Are you a lawyer? That was not a trick question.
I just really like the hamburgers at Foster's.
We changed that to the 25%.
No, I thought we took out the word prepare, that's because it was, I'm trying to remember.
What section
Looking
is
at
that?
some old version.
it's I, the
Oh.
last,
Well, we would just say except as permitted by special permit, right?
No, but I think repair in general is hard to keep track of because there's no permit
Yeah, no.
required for repair.
Did they repair, did they not repair?
I don't know how you'd ever keep track of that.
Replaced or relocated.
I've seen that, I mean, that's pretty common to have those in the codes, just.
I thought we debated the word repair and we came up with a better alternative. That's how I remember it, but I don't have it in my
Yeah, I don't have it.
version here. Because I agree, you should be able to repair your sign. If it's broken, you should be able to fix it. But you don't want to change the sign more than 25%. Yeah. Came up with another word that was better.
Altered would satisfy the intent
Yeah, I think that's a better word.
instead of repaired, because altered rather than repaired.
So alterations,
Right.
sign alterations.
So,
Yeah, I think we're talking about things that are very seldom gonna come up. We would hope, are very seldom gonna come up, but.
Right, there's not too many historic signs like that.
so, but are we striking the repair? Is that what we're?
We're gonna put altered instead of repaired.
Yes.
No longer alliterative, but.
I thought we did that, but I never noticed.
Colton probably messed it up.
No, it's me who probably messed it up.
That's an I one.
Yeah.
And this way it gets noted in the,
And Victoria, you had one more item
Yeah, so the,
in regard to this particular version of the code.
and not in regard to short-term rentals, yes.
Right.
I thought there was a conflict in your provisions for rebuilding a multifamily home in the residential district. Right now, those are pre-existing non-conforming, but they're subject to their own set of regulations. And so there was a reference added to the other non-conforming use provisions, and I think that they conflict, and it's gonna result in confusion. So for instance, another. If, let's say there's a fire and the house needs to be rebuilt or repaired, and I do point out that these provide a lot of the affordable housing for people in the village because, this is where the working people live. So 120-54B prohibits the expansion of volume, allows, 120-45B, which is your regular non-conforming use provision, you are now going to prohibit. Okay.
120-45B,
Yes.
any subdivision of more than 2 lots?
No.
Is that the rule?
54, sorry.
54?
I didn't think that made a difference. Yeah. It hasn't yet.
I think this is being added in relation to that case you had at the old Grand Union, where you're now prohibiting the volume. So you can't expand an existing non-conforming use by volume. So you can't enlarge its footprint, you can't make it go to other rooms, etc.
That's in 54.
That's in 54.
Right.
However, in your multifamily structure provisions, you do allow there to be some expansion with planning board approval. And so I think those two provisions conflict.
What section is that?
That's 120-29B2.
Or 29B2? Yeah, I mean, technically, but that's more specific, so the more specific should govern over the.
It should, except that you've added a reference. So if you go to 120-29C, this is the specific provisions for multifamily housing, you've added a reference to that non-conforming use section, which wasn't there before. And I think that.
Now we just kind of kneecapped ourselves.
So the key word here is large, when you talk about in 29B, when you're talking maybe replacing the word large.
Well, so what I'm saying is before, there's a general rule in zoning that we have specific provisions that prevail over general provisions. So if you're looking at the code today, the specific regulations for multifamily housing are going to prevail over the general non-conforming use. But now you're adding a reference back to the non-conforming use saying that all these apply also. So now you've got.
We need to remove that reference.
Rich added that a couple weeks ago, our attorney, so he probably didn't see that.
So
we can
remove it.
strike it back again.
Well, and then just so everyone's clear, I mean, one of the other reasons it conflicts is because you can rebuild with a special permit, you can rebuild a multifamily home with a special permit from the planning board, but that reference back to the non-conforming use provision is also going to require a variance from the zoning board. So you're making it more difficult to rebuild.
So what's the fix?
You just
strike- take out that reference.
strike and non-conforming use provisions. Strike the words and non-conforming use.
I mean, I think it was working as it was. Yeah, take out the addition in 29C.
Right. You can do that, yeah.
I don't know. Oh, take out the last four words. Okay,
Yeah.
that's simple.
That was simple.
Yes. You got you.
You guys-
Okay,
So then there's one more item, and this is, it has to do with rehabilitation of all these historic barns. They're all in the historic district, they're contributing structures, and so you can't do anything with them, you can't knock them down, they all require approval. And the first draft had the word encouraged, so they were being encouraged to be adaptively reused, which would make it easier for people to invest money in fixing them. But you've taken out the word encouraged and replaced it with considered, which to a lawyer means nothing. It means, okay, we'll look at it, but we're not giving you any special treatment. And so I think encourage is a stronger word, and it's going to cause restoration of these historic structures more than just saying, we'll consider your application.
Encourage was my word.
Right,
I was told not to soften it up. I wrote that section because I really want to save those buildings. I think there's somebody on the ZBA who didn't like that.
Well, there were a number of us that wanted it to be allowed rather than encouraged.
But you said consider.
The word is
Right,
now
well,
considered.
and I think we compromised on consider. In the sense that we didn't want to put somebody in a position where that could be made a condition for them to do something else. That they would be encouraged, therefore they would have to do it. There are also places where it might not be appropriate for somebody to do that.
So that's a word.
It's still
I mean,
persuasive.
Consider is a weasel word.
Consider me. I can't go to court on consider.
Right.
right, so we like consider.
That's what,
Well, I mean, if the intent of this provision, I assume the intent is to say, okay, everyone, we want you to be able to use these outbuildings. If that's the intent, then you really want to encourage the reuse of the outbuildings.
That was my intent.
That's what was considered.
Right,
I don't think it was everybody's intent.
right.
That's,
Do you have the section there? You know the code section?
It's 120-39.
39?
In the historical district overlay.
Yeah.
And which one is it?
39.
No,
D1.
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 Seriously considered.
That's even better.
Yeah, I don't know that we want to encourage home occupation or accessory apartments.
Yeah, that's a discussion we had about.
That's the discussion we had.
I want to
That-
encourage it myself.
Right, well, but others of us don't necessarily want to encourage it. We want to be able to consider it. We want to be able to, where appropriate. But if again, as you kind of pointed out, if it's encouraged, then it kind of binds the hands of the planning board in terms of not allowing it where it might not be as appropriate.
But you do have standards. And you have standards. They are allowed in the law based on these standards. And all this says is that you should be able to get a variance. You should be, they should favorably look upon variances if they meet the standards. Because these are historic buildings that otherwise can't be used. Because a lot of times they're on property lines or close to property lines or, you know, don't meet rear setback standards or minor things. And because the code encourages accessory apartments by allowing them with standards, I think it's appropriate. But you can think of another.
You're not supposed to ignore it. you know, it means just don't ignore it. I mean, consider it.
I mean, you don't have to even say consider, because the board has to consider everything that comes before it anyways. It's just if you're going to choose a word, then, you know, we prefer encourage.
Yeah, I think encourage is too strong.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree that considered they need to, so we kind of need to find that middle ground.
I agree.
Consider on a case-by-case basis.
Does
Well,
that,
that's what they do anyway.
is it better though? Like, we're just adding more words.
No, I'm not saying add those words.
Well, so, again, I mean, you guys don't have to decide today.
Well, now wait a minute. If you look at the word, what it actually says, is such home occupation accessory apartment should be encouraged, let me put my original word in there, including consideration of any reasonable area variance. So you're already saying, you know, the whole idea is to encourage reuse of these things and then consider reasonable area variances. To me, that sounds
How about if you took away
moderate.
the such
It
as,
doesn't tie anybody's hands. It just says you have to consider reasonable area variances.
okay, so then you can take out such as home occupations and accessory apartments should be considered, and just have conversion to allowable uses, and include consideration of any reasonable area variances.
Like
don't
you just
need-
want to take out
you
home
don't-
occupation
Yeah,
accessory
you don't
apartments?
need, yeah, because those are, would require area variances.
After
Or
the,
use variance.
after the comma of uses,
Right,
remove such as a home occupation or accessory apartment should be considered, comma.
get rid of
And,
that.
yeah, remove that section of code. And just say, active allowable uses including consideration of any reasonable area variance.
We still need a verb.
Yeah, you gotta throw
Still say
something
should
there.
be encouraged. You can take out home occupation or accessory apartment. Conversion to active allowable uses should be encouraged, including consideration of any reasonable area variance.
Right, that,
Okay?
Okay,
That
say
would
that,
include garages and.
right, but that's what they're there for. It's very difficult for us to,
I'm saying it's broader. That's-
right. You know, if somebody wants to rebuild a carriage house, to use it as a carriage house, you know, whether it's a horse-drawn carriage or a Jaguar, you know, that shouldn't be restricted.
so what did you say, John?
Take out words such as home occupation or accessory apartment, and then change the first considered back to encouraged.
Okay.
Because home occupation and accessory apartment are allowable uses under the code by special permit. Yeah. All right, because that's what really bugs those people, is they don't want to see home occupations.
Are we getting to?
Or Airbnbs,
Well-
accessory structures.
We gotta get through this section of through the code first, sorry Megan, that the trees are not in this section of the code.
I understand
Yeah.
that. I just want an answer tonight. I don't need to go
Oh,
nowhere
okay.
tonight. I just want to know and hope that you're not going to be voting on a zoning law that doesn't include provisions that protect your trees in town. Because you're going to repeat all the problems that you've had with sidewalks and trees unless you do something about it. And it seems to me it should be in the zoning law to do it. That's all I'm saying. I don't have to do it tonight. I'm happy to provide you with, you know, the standards, all the options, but I just didn't want to leave tonight thinking that this law would pass without something in it that's going to protect your trees and sidewalks. And it's not.
What's your minimum planting strip width?
The minimum planting strip width would be 4 feet.
4? I would have gone 5, but, okay.
Well, 4 or 5, minimum 4, and along.
That's what we, I
You
think,
don't have
passed
anything in
at the deli.
Right.
You don't
the
have anything in there.
Right, the reason for that was that there wasn't enough separation between the building and
And then
the,
you don't do a planting strip and you do cutouts that will allow it.
No,
No,
that's
no,
not
that's
true.
not-
What we passed, as I remember from the minutes, I think Karen could confirm this, is that we passed 5 feet. But when
but
they.
it was conditional upon moving the curb.
No, We passed a minimum 5 feet, and whatever was left would be the plantings for near the house. And whoever wrote up the site plan, put the dimensions on the site plan, put 3 instead of 5.
Well, it's
So
not
that
three.
would, it is 3. It's not measured,
I
but,
don't think so.
yeah, it is 3, but.
You go look at it.
I did, I looked at it, pasted it off. But at any rate, it got built at 3 rather than 5. And so they said, what do? Do we make them tear out the sidewalk? Because we tried to get 5 in there, that was what we wanted, that's what we asked for. It's not in the code, but that's what we ask for when we see a new sidewalk, if there's room.
Well, I'm just
And
saying that I think.
It should be in the code.
It should be in the code.
Right.
And if it's minimal of 3, even if it's not, the sidewalk should be underlaid with structural soil.
Right, but doesn't that go in a separate, don't we have a separate sidewalk?
That's a separate site, yes.
And streets?
Yes, we do.
That should be in that area.
But I do think in the site plan section, it would be useful to have a minimum planting strip width, so that the planning board has guidance for at least that piece.
And I would disagree in terms of, not that I don't like planting strips and trees and stuff, but there are places in the village where that planting strip is not possible because of the location of the house. In those cases where the house is right up against the sidewalk, if you go on the last block of Livingston towards Montgomery, on the south side, some of those houses are within 4 or 5 feet of the sidewalk, and if they plant a tree, then you know, the tree is going to grow into the house, potentially.
So you say you have a minimum thing wherever possible. And so that way, if it's not possible.
Well, and I think that you remember differently than I do in terms of Bill Clark's, because I think that the 5 foot was predicated upon the ability to narrow the street an additional 2 feet to be able to accommodate a wider planting strip. And a decision was made, I think here, that, or by somebody, that you couldn't narrow the street.
I think a good board.
Okay, well, that was my understanding, was that, and maybe John made that call based upon something else, but.
I mean, I don't know where this should go, whether it's a
So-
separate code. I'm just saying that if you want more street trees, if you want trees that are not gonna buck sidewalks in your future, you need to put standards in that will provide conditions that help you do that. That's all I'm
So
saying.
I guess where do we do that since it's not in this section?
Well, I think we would put a reference in this section to wherever the code is elsewhere, and have that code in terms of with streets and sidewalks.
The site plan stuff, the detailed stuff is in the submittal information, 120-47.
It doesn't have any standards.
No,
It essentially
but
says what you're required to submit.
Right. But we don't hit, remember the standard part isn't.
But the standards are established in the sidewalk and
So, the sidewalk code is 125, 29. That's probably where they should go.
Well, but if we put a reference in 12047 to refer to the sidewalk code, could accomplish
the
that.
same
And
thing.
then we need to amend this, then we need to take a look at the sidewalk code
Yeah.
in itself. I think that's probably the way to go.
You need to look at that anyway, because you allow asphalt sidewalks in the village.
Right.
Yes, I know.
And you should change that.
One just went in.
But,
One just went in.
I know,
On Route
and so
9.
you should change that anyway, and that would be a good opportunity to add street,
Where'd you put it?
tree.
Not me. I just noticed it today.
So Rick, get us
I think
the
we should
language.
go minimum 5 foot planting
Get us the
strip wherever
language.
possible.
Well,
For the sidewalk,
And
for the sidewalk
structural
code.
soil.
Yeah.
That is really important.
I know you like structural.
No, it is really important.
Well, there's
Ask any of the experts out there.
Okay, let's get it down to one conversation here so we get out. All right, so, all right.
So I'm going to look at how to, since interacting with Meg, how we want to modify our sidewalk code as in 125, 29, and we're simply incorporating a reference into the current zoning changes to this section of zoning code.
But that doesn't mean, we can incorporate the reference here,
Right, incorporate the reference, and then this is gonna be another project.
and that can be another
Yeah.
item.
That's agreed.
So at a minimum, it references what's there, and then you can work on updating what's there as a separate activity.
Precisely.
So that reference would go in 12047C.
Sure. Required information for site plan.
Yes.
So it would be in item 16, 120-47C16.
Yes.
And then, how do you want to word that?
Reference to the sidewalk.
Okay,
Do you have it?
I'll come up with something.
Okay.
Reference to,
Sidewalks, curbing, and
125, 29 sidewalks.
Yeah, does that?
sidewalks, planting, curbing and planting strips will conform with that section of the code.
Sidewalks, curbing,
And planting strips.
And cutouts, I would put too.
Well, that's,
planting strips.
I mean, one or either or, just
Right.
they're not, you know, you might have to put
Yeah,
cutouts.
but you're gonna,
But-
no, he's right, you should say that sidewalks, curbing, and planting strips that conform to, and then we're gonna change this to have that.
Correct.
To section.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. All right, so based on the comments received tonight, is there anything else you want to?
Well, the adult uses, I don't know if we wanna tackle that McGill right now.
did we not have a definition of adult uses
We did.
previously?
Yeah, this was struck by the attorney.
Struck by rituals.
No, but before we
I don't
put
think
this
we
one.
did.
No.
We didn't have anything,
It was new in the last,
so we're just going back to existing.
Yeah, and fortunately, we've been relatively
They're lucky.
lucky, or,
Right.
I would hate to hold this up based upon adult use.
Well, you could always make an amendment later
Right, later
on.
on.
So
Right.
you just have to have another public hearing and go through a process.
Did I understand that the only legitimate restrictions on adult businesses are distances from schools and other, that's the only viable?
I know that that is a viable one. I know that from my representation of schools. I've never researched whether there's other viable ones. None come to mind. I mean, there's
You can
schools
restrict
are
it to
obvious.
one district.
Sorry.
You have to allow it someplace, if I remember correctly. It has to be allowed
We
someplace
could put it, yeah.
Someplace within the
restricted to
boundaries.
business.
within the boundaries of the municipality.
What we did on the committee, as I remember, we said it's allowed in one district in the town, so it's allowed in Rhinebeck. We couldn't think of any district in the village which we wanted to put it in. So,
Very tasteful, not
I was
only
thinking of barring the
square
living
foot
space.
sign.
so we're not, so
We can do it later.
we can leave that out. Are you okay, Tim, leaving it out for this
For now.
section to move it? And
yeah, in order to move things along, I don't want to open a can of worms, but I don't want it to get forgotten either, because
Correct.
someday it's
I
going to
agree.
sneak up on us.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because these things are profitable, I guess, because they show up in
It's
places.
just after sleeping in food,
They tend to show up in nondescript strip malls and things like that, because people don't want to show themselves walking into them, I guess.
And they start off as Airbnbs.
We should have,
But
we should have a nondescript strip mall district.
we can allow them in the gateway, we can allow them in the gateway business districts by special permit, but not within so many feet of a school, and that would take care of it. There's a school out there.
That way,
There's more than one
actually,
gateway district.
Yeah, and it's,
No, but I mean, you would set the distance of the school so that it could be allowed in, one building or something, so that the chances of it happening are very low.
They'll run you.
If you're required to have it, I would like to find out if you could have it as long as it's within the contiguous community, not in the same municipality, because they do allow it in the office research zone in the town. Although they call it passive adult use, which I'm not sure, and I looked at the definition a couple times and I couldn't figure out what it meant. It sounded like it meant video.
Not going there.
It sounded like what it meant was video stores rather than exotic dancers.
Right.
But that, they didn't say that, they said it in such a weird way that I couldn't figure it out. But you might look at that, I don't know. That's how the town handled it.
All right, so does this end the discussion?
I think so.
Yeah, I have nothing else.
Are you good?
I'm good. And thank you guys. I mean, really, I'm just stepping into all this stuff. And this is it's a huge piece of work. It's really complicated. Obviously, a lot of opinions. So I'm just really impressed. 10 years to get to this point. So thank you guys. It's really, it's impressive.
It's still not going to satisfy the decimal people.
Of course not. Well, nobody's ever going to look like it this out.
Graham, would you like to make a motion to?
I make a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn.
Yeah, wait.
We close the public, no, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
You already did that.
I think we already closed.
We're adjourning the meeting.
No, we
No.
have work to do.
No. Now we have to make a motion to really adjourn the discussion, to go for vote. or
I
not?
don't think
You're not
so,
gonna
you're not
vote
voting on anything.
We're not voting on
You
it.
just have to close up the meeting, which you already did.
Okay.
Right,
Yeah, send it to the county, don't you?
Right.
Yeah, you have some.
We did already.
okay.
We just hadn't had feedback.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, I think your exorbitant salary that's causing their taxes to be so high.
That's your copy, right?
Yeah, right.
I have a copy.
You do?
Yeah.
All right.
So we do.
Yeah, well, no, we have other,
No, we've other work to do.
we have other meetings,
We want to adjourn regular,
not yet, not yet.
oh, we have other regular.
We have other regular business.
Yeah, that's just,
That's the CEO.
that was,
So,
this is executive.
Brand, how do you want to handle the water treatment plant operator training position?
I thought we were going to go into executive
We
session.
can go into executive session
Yeah.
for that. To discuss salary of water plant operator.
Right.
All right, so next on the agenda is curbing and sidewalk bids for Montgomery Street and Astor Drive.
Okay, John Fenton, as required, solicited 3 different contractors. We received bids. The low bid, which also includes materials being provided by the Northern Dutchess Hospital, and they're kicking in another $500 for us, comes from the Stat Construction Company. So I would like to move that we accept the proposal number, looks like one, well, I'll say the proposal from Stat Construction Company to do the.
What is the final?
Well, the total cost will be $16,600, of which $2,480 will be paid by the hospital for the materials, and they're throwing us another $500.
And what?
And another $500.
So their contribution is $2,980
80, correct.
from the 16.6.
From the 16.6. So ours is 13,620, I think.
13,620. Right.
Can we
Yes.
ask the attorney a question? Our meeting tomorrow night for the Airbnb, the
Short-term rental.
Short-term rental, is that limited to just those people that are members of the committee, or is anybody?
The committee is limited, but people could obviously listen.
Okay.
We were going to meet in Pat's office, though, that's the only thing.
Oh,
Right.
you were.
And do we need to take public comments?
No.
I don't know, but I would say that any notes you take, obviously would be subject to FOIL, of course, because it's prize ownership.
Yeah, okay. So, my opinion was the committee to come up and.
I just anticipate that there might be some
Yeah.
encouraging
people in addition
people
to
who
the
want to
7
show
people
up
that are on
and
it.
listen.
So is the question, I guess you have two questions, right? One is, do they have a right to listen, and the other is, do they have a right to participate?
Right.
And this was just a subcommittee formed by the board? I'll look, I mean, I think that, let me just look into it before I answer that, okay, I'll look tomorrow morning. Do you want to, or can I contact you, Pat, or Gary?
Or one, the liaisons.
Oh, okay, oh, perfect, okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Thanks.
You brought up a point though about the, any notes taken are foilable, so they would have to, those notes would have to be turned into me, or?
Well, they don't necessarily turn into you, they could hold them,
Okay.
do they, as long as they otherwise maintain,
Okay.
they maintain their files.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
you know, they can do that.
And getting back to Rick,
So,
can I have
yes.
a copy of the bids, please?
Sure, I will email
I like that. Thank you.
you. You get it.
So are you making a motion?
Yes, it has been made, I think.
Second?
Any discussion?
It's under 35,000, so we don't have to go to.
Yeah, we still can't listen to this.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Good. We have a start date?
Not that I'm aware of, but I'll talk to John about that. And I think as soon as practicable is the answer, but I don't know what that means.
All right, for other business, we do have to approve the bonds that we voted on at the last meeting for the police car and the truck. So I need to read the resolutions into record. The first resolution is a resolution authorized subject to permissive referendum, a purchase of a dump truck for the village of Rhinebeck, Dutchess County, New York, at a maximum estimated cost of $180,000 and authorizing the issuance of $180,000 for serial bonds of said village to pay the cost thereof. It's a very long resolution. Do I need to read the full extent of the resolution, or is the summary acceptable?
What is this, do you have a summary typed? Or would you just be summarizing it orally?
There is no summary type, correct, there is not.
I would say if you're voting, unfortunately, I'm sorry. If you're
Yes,
voting,
all right, that's fine. Whereas a capital project hereinafter described as proposed has been determined to be a type 2 action pursuant to the regulations of New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, promulgated pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, which regulations state that type 2 actions will not have a significant adverse effect on the environment. And whereas it is now desired to authorize the financing thereof, and now therefore be it resolved by the affirmative vote of not less than 2/3 of the voting strength of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Rhinebeck, Dutchess County, New York, as the village as follows. Section 1, the purchase of a dump truck for maintenance purposes for the Village of Rhinebeck, Dutchess County, New York, including incidental equipment and expenses connected therewith, is hereby authorizing a maximum estimated cost of $180,000. Section 2, the plan for financing of the aforesaid maximum estimated cost is by the issuance of $180,000 serial bonds of said village, hereby authorized to be issued, therefore pursuant to the provisions of the local finance law. Section 3, it is hereby determined that the period of the probable usefulness of the aforesaid specific object for purpose is 15 years, pursuant to subdivision 28, paragraph A of section 11 of the local finance law. It is hereby further determined that the maximum maturity of the serial bonds within herein authorized will exceed 5 years. Section 4, the faith and credit of said village of Rhinebeck, Dutchess County, New York, and hereby irrevocably pledged for the payment of the principal of and interest on such bonds at the same respect to become due and payable. An annual appropriation shall be made in each year sufficient to pay the principal of the interest of such bonds becoming due and payable in such year. There shall annually be levied on all taxable real property of said village a tax sufficient to pay the principal of and interest on such bonds as the same become due and payable. Section 5, subject to the provisions of the local finance law, the power to authorize issuance of and to sell bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of sale of the serial bonds herein authorized, including renewal of such notes, is hereby delegated to the village treasurer, the chief fiscal officer. Such notes shall be such terms, forms, and contents, and shall be sold in such manner as may be described by said village treasurer, consistent with the provisions of the local finance law. Section 6, the powers and duties of advertising such bond for sale, conducting the sale and awarding the bonds are hereby delegated to the village treasurer, who shall advise such bond for sale, conduct the sale, and award the bonds in such manner as the village treasurer shall deem best for the interest of said village. However, that in the exercise of these delegated powers, the village treasurer shall comply fully with the provisions of the local finance law and any order or rule of the state controller applicable to the sale of municipal bonds. The receipt of the village treasurer shall be a full acquittance to the purchase of such bonds, who shall not be obliged to see to the application of the purchase money. Section 7. All other matters except as provided herein related to the serial bonds, herein authorized, including the date, denominations, maturities, and interest payment dates, with the limitations prescribed herein in the manner of execution of the same, including the consolidation with other issues, and also the ability to issue serial bonds with substantially level or declining annual debt service, shall be determined by the village treasurer, the chief fiscal officer of such village. Such bonds shall contain substantially the recital of validity clause provided for in section 52 of the local finance law, and shall otherwise be in such form and contain such recitals, in addition to those acquired by section 51 of the local finance law, as the village treasurer shall determine consistent with the provisions of the local finance law. Section 8. The validity of such bonds and bond anticipation notes may be contested only if such obligations are authorized for an object of purchase for which said village is not authorized to expend money, or the provisions of law which should be compiled with the date of the publication of the resolution are not substantially complied with, and an action, suit, or proceeding contesting such validity is commenced within 20 days after the date of such publication. Or 3, such obligations are authorized in violation of the provisions of the Constitution. Section 9. The resolution shall constitute a statement of official intent for purposes of Treasury Regulations Section 1.150-2. Other than as specified in this resolution, no monies are or are reasonably expected to be reserved, allocated for a long-term basis, or otherwise set aside with respect to the permanent funding of the object for the purpose described herein. Section 10. Upon this resolution taking effect, the same shall be published in summary form in the official newspaper of said village for such purpose, together with a notice of the village clerk in substantially the form providing in section 81 of the local finance law. Section 11. This resolution is adopted subject to a permissive referendum. That's the reading of the bond for the highway truck.
The other one should be substantially similar.
Yes, for the police car. Do we read them both in? Or run it one on one at a time?
Sorry?
It's separate for each one.
Yeah.
But
It's
if
a
you,
separate
you
resolution.
shouldn't have to read the same exact words, right?
It's identical other than a few words.
I'm just thinking it might.
It is identical except for the description and
Then then you can just, if you could just read the sections that aren't
Okay.
capitalized.
all right, but we should vote on them separately,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you
Yes.
could vote.
So I'd like to make a motion to accept the resolution for the purchase of the village truck by issuing the bonds as defined in this bond resolution.
Second.
Discussion?
Is it 10-year amortization on the truck or
15.
15.
15? Okay, it'll last that long. Hopefully.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. Opposed. Nay, whatever you want me to say.
Abstain? Carried by the majority. All right, the second resolution. Same words, except for the description at the top. It's a bond resolution dated June 27, 2017. This is a resolution authorizing the issuance of $40,000 bonds of the Village of Rhinebeck, Dutchess County, New York, to pay the cost of the purchase of a utility vehicle for the police department in and for said village. The difference is that the purchase of the utility is in section 1. The purchase of the utility vehicle for the police department including incidental equipment and expenses in conjunction therewith, the Village of Rhinebeck, Dutchess County, New York is hereby authorized to maximum cost of $40,000. Right? And section 3 is hereby determined that the period of probable usefulness of the aforesaid specific object for the purpose is 5 years, pursuant to the subdivision 29, paragraph A of section 11 of the local finance law. It is hereby determined that the maximum maturity of the serial bonds herein authorized will not exceed 5 years. The rest is the same. The rest is identical. All right, I'd like to make a motion to accept the bond resolution for the purchase of a utility vehicle for the police department for $40,000.
Second.
All discussion?
Utility vehicle means a squad car or a SUV or what?
Well, it's really based on the usefulness of the vehicle, which extended it to 5 years. So it had to be classified as a utility vehicle to extend it to 5 years.
Okay.
And either one could fit the definition. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? So carried.
I would just like to note that will be published within a local paper or official newspaper. It will be posted in 6 locations. And I have to do that within 10 days.
Okay. I lost my agenda here, my paper. Yes, please, since I now misplaced it. Now I found it.
Now I have one.
Now it's been found.
I know the feeling.
All right, so that ends other business. I would here like to make a motion to close the regular session of our meeting today and adjourn to an executive session.
I just wanted to mention our 2 new summer.
Oh, very good, thank you.
Okay, we hired 2 new summer, our temporary seasonal part-time workers. We hired 2 of them. They started today, and their names are Samuel Fallon and Chris Decker. They worked with John this morning from 9 to 1, and they seem to be working out very well. So this program has started, and they did good work outside. They watched safety video. They did everything. So that's so far it's worked out well.
Yeah. The only thing I asked is that they were suited up with the proper safety, a vest, a hard hat, gloves for safety, for their protection. And the only other thing is possibly if we could get them a shirt for identification.
Mm-hmm. I'll get a t-shirt. I'm going to be talking to.
Right, to be consistent with everybody else, for identification purposes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Pat.
Sorry.
Again, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the regular session of the June 27th regular meeting to go into executive session to discuss several subjects. One is the salary of the water treatment plant operator trainee position. Second is discussion on the MEO for highway and action for that. And the third would be in regard to definition of the clerk position within the current village staff.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Carried. Go into executive session. You're going to have to come back because we're going to, if we make a motion on something. Okay. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the executive session and go back into regular session for discussion of salaries.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Carried. All right. Now into regular session. I'm going to turn it over to Brant.
I would like to make a motion that we extend an offer to Anthony Valenti for the water department trainee position, and I would like to set that the pay rate at $14 per hour.
I'll second. Discussion?
And it's a 90-day
I think there's a 90-day probationary period.
probation.
He won't be able to, he's got to get a 2-week notice
Oh.
in his current job, just so everyone knows.
All right, so when would the start date be in 2 weeks then?
Approximately 2 weeks from tomorrow.
Okay.
And
So unless you have another meeting before then, do you make a motion to hire now? Is that your?
To extend the offer now?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think the motion is to extend the offer now.
right.
Okay.
Yes.
We don't know if he'll accept it.
Right, okay, so.
And he's been selected after you received 8 people who are interested and interviewed 4 of the 8. Correct?
Yes, approximately.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carried.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the June 27th, 2017 regular special meeting
After the public hearing.
after the public hearing. Yes.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Carried. 10:23. Thank you so much for staying.
Thank you.